Hello and welcome to Varn Blog, and today I'm here with Dave of Nightmare Masterclass, who was the first official guest of the show. You weren't actually the first guest, but you're the first guest of the show as the show. And
the first proper guest.
Yeah. And you visited regularly for the first 3 years, and then for some reason, in the chaos of the last 2 years, we didn't do our yearly checkup. For those of you who've been following along in my personal drama, which doesn't come up on the interview show, but does on the solo show, I've had a nodule, tumor in my thyroid, and it has put me on hiatus twice in a year. But it is gone now. And while they told me I could lose my voice or it would warp my throat, because so for those of you who don't know your anatomy, your thyroid and parathyroid are right beneath the two major nerves that control your voice box. Apparently, they did a really good job and didn't touch any of that, because I am fine. I had a rough throat. I sounded like Tom Waits for about a week, and then we are almost 2 weeks out, and other than swelling, which you kind of see right here, if you're watching the show, if you're listening, you don't see it. I'm totally normal. So that's a personal update. Be narcissistic. But hi, Dave. What are you guys doing over at Nightmare Masterclass these days?
Yeah, I mean, I've had some health issues as well, so that put me in I was also on hiatus. So we can commiserate over that a little bit if you want. But yeah, I just recently put out a couple videos, but nothing too crazy. I'm just trying to get back into the swing of things, get some momentum going. But yeah, I don't know. I have several kind of long form videos in the works. I feel like my longer videos tend to get a little bit more traction. People use it as like second monitor content, which I don't know. Is that like insulting, or is it I don't know how to really take that information, second monitor content. But it's I don't know, I'll take it.
As a person who is unmonetized and on YouTube, I think I am always browser behind the one you're watching content, because I'm not quite sure anyone actually watches this. They just listen to it. But for some reason, Zoomers like to listen to podcasts on YouTube. So I feel you. No, I don't actually think second monitor content is an insult. I personally have used yours, Understanding Evil. There's a few channels that I'll like put on when I'm doing schoolwork as a teacher, and will be kind of enraptured, but I don't need to see all the visuals. So yeah, your second monitor content for me too. But that's no more insulting than being on a podcast, which I guess depending on who you talk to is insulting or not. I don't know.
I did a fairly long analysis of a it's hard to describe exactly what it is. I guess it's a webcomic called 3D Workers Island. I put that out last November. That's probably the thing I've gotten the most traction on in the past couple years. So that was kind of an interesting project, playing with the format of like the story is kind of told through old forum posts. And so you kind of switch between, you kind of go sequentially and learn more about this weird screensaver. And the subtext is kind of creepy. It's part of it's really about the culture of the internet at that time. Circa, I don't know, I want to say like early 2000s. I think all of the stuff is time stamped. So it's interesting. It's pretty clear the creator, kind of went through the trouble of creating like an actual forum and telling a story by creating all these characters in the forum and how they kind of talk about this bizarre screensaver where random things happen, and then some people report that like unseemly things happen, but no, there's no official proof. So it's kind of about how like rumors start and how memes start over time. I'm not really doing it justice here because my brain is fried, but it's, yeah, maybe if you're watching me for the first time, maybe check that out. 3D Workers Island is now that the video is called 3D Workers Island Full Analysis or something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. I've been getting a little bit back in the cultural commentary lately. The last year in politics has and by this I don't mean the mainstream politics. It's actually the non-mainstream politics, or I don't even know what mainstream means anymore. I mean, like how half the TikTok influencers are receiving dark money from somebody.
That's a great story to talk about. Man, that is obviously not surprising, but the way in which certain people are defending it is really discouraging.
That's what's gotten me. It's the defenses of it, because I'm like, look, I like TY2 to Jeffrey Katzenberg money, like independent progressive media takes billionaire money. I know that, but they didn't hide it, and they sure as heck didn't claim that it was debunked by confirming that it was real, then outing it, but only outing it after the article in Wired dropped, then saying it was a scholarship even though the people aren't in school. I was just like, and basically it just became oh well, we just need our own billionaires. You know what? I'd expect that from like blue wave dim types.
Sure.
Because they're not morally equivalent, but they have learned like reptile brain style to basically become Rush Limbaugh ditto heads, like they did for Rachel Maddow during her conspiracy mongering during the first Trump administration, which is now basically destroyed MSNBC as a network. But it's just, I don't even mind that. And they're like, oh, it didn't change our content. I'm like, no, that no one even accused you of it changing your content. Well, what you were accused of is not taking on any critical voices from the left by signing that and signing an NDA, and nobody's denying that. And if it wasn't true, I have a strange feeling that either David Pakman or someone from Midas Touch would be suing Taylor Lorenz for libel. I don't like Taylor Lorenz. I don't really dislike her either. I just don't, sure. I find all the internet drama tiresome, but
they look, they would be demanding a retraction. They would be threatening to sue. I don't see a whole lot of people doing that. What I see is like David Pakman confidently asserting that it's been debunked when it actually hasn't been debunked. And pretty much everybody saying it's either like misinformation or fake news, which is, just like, that's right out of the Trumpian playbook. Any criticism of you just say is fake news. It's not real, and don't provide any citation. Or I've seen screenshots of the contract that they signed. The claims are essentially true.
And they haven't denied the claims. Actually, what Pakman specifically denied wasn't in the article, which is they asked him to change his content. That's never alleged. And, he was paid to promote certain things. That's never really alleged either. The allegement is they got a $8,000 stipend or scholarship is what. And it involves a lot of people so I create alternate accounts to follow the media landscapes of different ideologies. So I have a progressive account, and I'm not even saying that I don't sometimes listen to these creators. Like there's some of these people from like Midas Touch and stuff They just remind me of MSNBC back when it was Air America, except that they're often pretending to be individual actors on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube when they're clearly not. Now, having worked in publishing for as many years as I have and worked in the YouTube world, you and I both know how many organic successes are not organic. They have investors paying for click farms and stuff like that. I know that. I know it's a tactic that's used. If you see certain guests that come on shows and all of a sudden those shows have 80,000 views for one video, but nothing before and nothing after, you can almost promise it's a bot farm. I hate to make some of you cynical, but you can see it.
It's a good heuristic.
Right. It's like this channel has 2 videos that have gone viral, but there's nothing different about them than the other videos except a specific person who seems to be on the up and up in alternative media circles as a regular guest. I wonder why that is. That's a good heuristic for asking. And the other thing is, like, I've talked about this before, but people backdoor money through what is it that you do? I'm not monetized on YouTube, but the YouTube monetizations that you can do during a stream.
Oh, like the members.
Yeah, well, they can backdoor money through Patreon, and they can backdoor money through those shout out drop donation things. And you don't even really know that much about the people doing the drop. Like there have been people who've been accused of, for example, taking Russian money, who said they didn't know. And these are right wingers, but I was like, I believe they probably didn't know, because during these drops, these people are trying to, these influence guys, they're not trying to do, they would rather you not know it's them. They're just trying to make sure that you're there to spin a narrative. But this is,
like, imagine what these people would be saying if Chorus, this dark money organization, was Russian. Imagine,
right.
If the shoe was on the other foot, they would be screaming from the highest mountaintop.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing that, like, I've been doing podcasting and podcast world for a long time, and I'll tell you one of the things that has always baffled me. It actually hurts me with guests sometimes. I have trouble getting certain guests, and I suspect it's because they ask for my YouTube, and my YouTube is unmonetized, and I see I have 7,000 viewers, and then I show them, and when I show them my free podcast stats, I'm in the top 10%. That's not super impressive. That's like several, that's 5,000 to 10,000 downloads a month over 4 shows, and plus back catalog. I mean, so it's not like amazing, but it's good. And my Patreon numbers are in like the upper 20%, which is less than you'd think, because the 1% of Patreon makes like millions of dollars a year. But even the top 50%, you're barely breaking poverty wages, so
it's like how the average income is, in the country, is thrown off by the uber rich.
Right, very similar. In fact, it's in some ways worse because you can be fairly high up in the Patreon rankings and still not doing well. But I have, 500 patrons. That's not for a person without a crew who doesn't buy ads and who won't monetize his YouTube. That's pretty good. But people don't understand that YouTube engagements in particular are like Twitter engagements. You can buy them.
Oh, for sure.
Like, I've had offers for people to buy them. The reason why I don't is if you don't do it all the time, it fucks your algorithm. Like all of a sudden my video is only being given to people in Bangladesh. Like,
and in general, if you have a sudden surge and then the next video doesn't do well, it almost seems like you're punished for it.
Oh yeah, you are. Like, I've had I shouldn't say that. No one really knows how most of these algorithms work.
Yeah. It's very opaque.
But Chorus being what it is, I mean, my only thing about it is if they had disclosed it, if there wasn't an NDA involved, I don't think I would care. Like, But people are like, oh, are you against left wingers getting? I'm like, one, these people aren't left wingers; they're liberal progressives, and they might not even be that progressive.
A good litmus test would be their position on Israel Palestine. Like most of the people on the list have not spoken up about the genocide
about it at all. It's
at
missing
all
from those discussion.
They're just completely silent about it.
Right. Like, it's not that they're pro it, they just haven't brought it up at all, and that's something to notice. It has been, I think it really hurts a lot of these people's cred, though, which is why they're denying it. But also, like, it feels very much like even the base of the Democratic Party really cannot muster a positive identity on anything. I've been reading Democratic Party's like proposed stances on immigration, and again, it's like Trump light, maybe strongly limiting things that ICE can do, but they're not even talking. Like, Bill fucking Kristol is taking a stronger stance on immigration enforcement than the DNC is. So it's just
pretty dismal.
We're in a weird place. And well, and it's going to lead me though to some of these same people are people who rejected one of the movies we're going to talk about tonight, Edington, by Ari Aster.
Because they're being called out by it.
Yeah, and because I mean, I saw that like one of the New York Times editors basically call it a right-wing rant, and I was like, did I see the same movie? Because they're mocking progressives for leaning into right-wing conspiracy culture, but ultimately the villain's the right-wing conspiracy culture. Are we watching the same thing here? And
for sure,
the answer is no. I guess what bothers me about this as we're getting to Edington, though, is like, why are educated professionals in their 50s acting like MAGA chuds who are 22? Like,
yeah. And look, I mean, the thing with Edington is I think some people have been conditioned to sort of expect any kind of political message in a film to be fairly clear. And I mean, this is kind of a semantic game, right? But like, to me, the difference between propaganda and art is like propaganda will be fairly straightforward. You won't be wondering exactly what it means. You won't have a discourse about it, really. It'll be fairly clear what it means. Versus like art, which is supposed to generate discussion and there's supposed to be some kind of ambiguous element to it that leaves you kind of wondering about it. Even potentially years after you watched it. With Edington, it's like somewhere in between, right? There are multiple ways you could interpret what's going on in the film, but ultimately, it's kind of about how the inevitability of a capitalist agenda in the face of a sort of fractured working class that is totally at odds with one another because they're stuck in a fake world of a spectacle. They're too online. Then they take their online politics out into the world, and chaos ensues. Right. All the while, this company, what's it called? Solid Gold Magikarp, which is kind of an interesting little tidbit. This company has the data center built, and they have their agenda enacted in the end. And it's sort of ironic that the sheriff, the protagonist of the film, is against the data center being built, while the ostensibly well-meaning liberal, who is mayor, played by Pedro Pascal, is pro the data center being built because, obviously it'll bring in jobs, this and that. So the reactionary in the situation kind of landed on the correct position by accident. right? Because it's probably not a great thing for the town to have that data center built there, considering if you consider like the water scarcity issue.
Yeah, they're moving data centers out here in the desert, and I'm just like, lovely, because our water bills are going up and up and up. We haven't had the electricity spikes that you've seen in the northeast and southeast, but like, we don't have any water, and we see it all the time.
And so you kind of think like, or at the very least, like, what I was thinking after I watched the film, it's been a couple weeks since I saw it in theaters, so like my memory's not great, but I remember thinking, gee, if the sheriff and the indigenous people could only get on the same page about the data center, they could work together, but they're too mired in this online bullshit to have any kind of solidarity.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Ari Aster's last two movies are scarier than his first two movies, which were actually horror films, and the last two are not horror films. Beau is Afraid is terrifying. It is like a nightmare fever dream. Edington, I mean, slight spoilers here, but I couldn't even figure out if the people who showed up at the end of the movie were the right side pretending to be the left side, or the left side living up to the right side's paranoid delusion. And I know at some point you depart reality. At some point you're in some character. I'm not going to give whose, but you're in some character's delusional perspective. But I can't tell you when the delusional perspective kicked in.
It devolves into absurdity.
Right.
It devolves, and it's unclear, but you could say the people that attack the sheriff are like Antifa super soldiers. Mm-hmm. My personal opinion is that
are there right-wing mercenaries? Like, you have no idea.
I mean, my personal opinion is that the sheriff was killed because he opposed the data center being built.
Right. And that's what it was all about.
That's what it was all about the whole time. All this other stuff, like, obviously the George Floyd issue was a significant issue for the country, and I don't want to minimize that, but for that town, that was not a material issue in that town necessarily. The bigger issue would have been the data center by far. And the interesting tidbit about the company being called Solid Gold Magikarp is it is like one of these glitch tokens that LLMs have trouble with for some reason. So I feel like it's kind of a double entendre, because Magikarp is a Pokemon, and if you know anything about Magikarp, he's basically like a useless Pokemon. Mm-hmm. He doesn't really have any moves, so you have to train him over and over and over again. You have to basically cycle him in and out of battles without using him really, so until he levels up to become Gyarados, which is like this big water dragon, which I think is like a great metaphor for AI in general. Like, you have to train it. It's basically useless to begin with. You have to train it, and then it becomes some kind of nightmarish thing. I kind of think that's the subtext of why the company is called that. So there's a lot of little interesting details like that in the movie.
Yeah, I thought the movie was quite good. I think Beau and Afraid is better, but it seems to be getting at a lot of the way in which, like, we might call it spectacle. I don't love that term, but we might call it simulacra. But the way in which people's projections of politics to escape a kind of banal decline is making it impossible to respond to that banal decline. And also, what I find interesting is the critique of liberals in that movie is not what the liberals who targeted the movie as right-wing complained about, because frankly, they weren't good enough critics of cinema to pick it up. And that is, it's commenting on the fact that for practical reasons, progressives have created a whole lot of the forces that undo them over and over again. And you know, the clearest example for this today is, you know, what progressives now call like the South African mafia, which is, you know, Thiel, Musk, and then Bezos and Zuckerberg. Well, I hate to tell you, the reason why all those people are rich is Obama era policies specifically. Like, you know, the
low
reason why
rates.
Low interest rates, they all got direct government investment, which they used to buy up competition.
Subsidies, yeah.
They all got subsidies. Then they were allowed to subsist under conditions that did not go after monopolies and did not enforce antitrust laws, which that wasn't Obama. That was Jimmy fucking Carter, right? Who established all that. And, you know, and then they all, and I know that everybody, including MAGA people, don't have any memory anymore because they're constantly stimulated by bullshit. But if we go back to 2020, the MAGA people were yelling about Bill Gates, Musk, Zuckerberg. And because they felt, and I actually will say rightfully, paralegally censored, you know. So, but everybody forgets everything and no one means anything anymore. And, you know, that's where I'm at. Like, you have people who, when Alex Jones is supporting, you know, use of American troops and nationalizing National Guards,
I think he preached his whole career about against, ostensibly.
Yeah. Since the 90s, that motherfucker hadn't dropped Posse Comitatus, and well, that's gone now. And he's maybe having slight flashes of second thoughts, but barely, and he jumps back onto his pro-Trump train. It's just no one believes shit. So to bring it back to what we were talking about with Chorus, the seemingly billionaire funded progressive interest group with all the NDAs, what makes that so ironic is these people were pushing the oligarchy, and then when you actually scrape them, what did they really want? If I was to translate it, we want our own oligarchs because you took away our NGO industrial complex. Like, and I've seen supposed radicals defend this, and social democrats defend this, or democratic socialists, whatever the fuck they want to call themselves. And I'm just like, in what world do you think that the incentives that make billionaires bad is going to help you? You know, and it's going to be a lot harder to push against Soros-style conspiracies when this literally is one.
For sure.
Like, so I do think one of the things that Ari Aster pissed people off with is that he's basically right that progressives create their own monsters, and the people responding to that are so splintered and fractured and bullshit because they're personal. And that's the other thing. Their personal lives are shit for economic conditions too, which is part of what is pushing them into these delusional narratives. And the movie's just reflecting a feedback loop that is going insane. Like, and I very much feel that right now when I talk to anybody about anything in politics. It's just, and you know, I recently did a piece or commented on a piece from the 50s about ex-communists. Although today a lot of ex-communists don't even call themselves ex-communist. They just change what it all means. But, you know, I have a lot of friends who are diehard ex-communist weirdos, and and they're not my friends anymore. I'm friends with conservatives, but I don't tend to like people who like see the light in radically different directions in ways that make them conspiracy theorists and whatnot, because it to me indicates it's not just a difference in ideology. It's like that indicates a profound character flaw more than even differing ideology does.
Yeah, if you're like wildly oscillating between different ideologies, it's one thing if you're a young person and you're doing that. You're just, you know, trying to find yourself. It's another thing if that's like core identity is you had this like political shift and you suddenly saw the light and now you think you know better than everybody else.
Right. And the light is just the inversion of everything you used to believe. And so, you know, I get that problem. That's not new. I think we're going to see a lot of that in the coming future. I think a lot of people, just like after Occupy, I mean, Occupy's so far gone now, we forgot about how many people turned on Occupy and became weird libertarian proto neo-reactionaries almost. In addition to, you know, Graeber making everybody into Bernie toast social democrats. It is kind of amazing to me, and you study media too, the incentives for political media, I think we just have to admit, even on the far left, are uniformly bad. Let's say you don't betray, you don't change against your beliefs like Chapo. What you'll tend to do in their case is downplay your politics sometimes and then bring it up at other times. And I mean, I'll give them credit for taking a good stance on Palestine. So I'm not even sad about everything they're doing. But it's just like when people tell me Chapo is a comedy podcast, and I'm like, really? You're now just doing the far left version of Jon Stewart.
That's the Jon Stewart line.
Yeah.
I remember when he supposedly owned Tucker Carlson, and when Carlson tried to turn it back on him and say, well, you know, what about you? He was just like, well, I'm just a comedian.
Right.
And it's like, well, dude, you're the one sitting here trying to, you know, lecture Tucker. Like, you know, it's just interesting that kind of hypocrisy. Not that I even think Jon Stewart was necessarily wrong in that conversation. It's just like, that's a cop out to say that you're a comedian. And I think people, maybe people are starting to realize that. I mean, the goddamn guy from Cumtown is interviewing Richie Torres and having like kind of an emotional breakdown on camera. That podcast is known as being the most irony poisoned people on the internet. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No,
so that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of this. I mean, you have seen it. Cumtown was always a little bit more political. I remember when Stavos actually, someone who should not be named, but I used to work for, went on Cumtown and he tried to make an argument about media ownership on YouTube, and Stavos actually made an even more left-wing argument than said individual who I used to work for a socialist press.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. But I have found that we're just doing comedy. I'm like, look, every motherfucker political pundit right now that's of any influence is a former fucking comedian, left or right. Rogan, Cedar, Dorr. The sole exception is probably Brianna Joy Gray, and she was groomed to be a media person for mainstream media, and there was no place for her. So here you go. And that's also a lot of the podcast world, is people who have Ivy League degrees, who have backing to go into, and there just weren't the jobs and positions or even the eyes
for them on traditional media. They otherwise would have been like political pundits that would go on Bill Maher or ideally have some kind of show on MSNBC or something.
Right. And so that's the world of this media. And I mean, I've been living with the fact that I felt like one of the weird ironies of the Bernie pro days is I watched Jacobin become the Nation magazine very fast.
Yeah.
Literally by the time Boschkar gets appointed to the head of the Nation associate foundation, which was just like, oh, come on. It's just not that interesting anymore. It's like, in fact, it seems like that politics is very dead, but what's replacing it is nothing. I mean, I don't think for all the reporting about how right-wing Zoomer boys are under 24. I mean, because apparently Zoomer boys over 24 are men. Let me rephrase that. Are not don't show the same social attitudes at all. But I'm also like, they're 22-year-olds. I know that no one has any memory anymore, but if you remember the writing about early millennials who are a little bit younger than me, who were like in their 20s around 2005, they were predicted to be the most right-wing, if not reactionary generation ever at that age.
Yeah. And also, like, if you had my
millennial boys after
like,
a Gamergate and the rise of the alt-right, we were supposed to believe that all the millennial boys were going to be Nazis too. It rarely sticks. This is my point. I don't know what these kids are going to be like. I imagine they'll be feral wilderness seekers and whatnot, and we're hoping they don't eat our intestines when the AI overlords have shut down. But whatever, like.
Yeah, and I'm just like trying to think of the opinions I had in my early 20s.
I was a flaming reactionary.
Yeah, I had reactionary tendencies, but so in high school I was always kind of an anti-war lib, but then I started listening to like Sam Harris, and I kind of got into new atheism, which is like really kind of a common theme among a lot of people that I hear from.
I was involved in that. Although, to be fair, Dave, I hated Sam Harris from moment one.
Yeah, you were right.
But I like Richard. But I liked Richard Dawkins. So
Richard Dawkins had a stroke and has gotten way worse. I feel like he didn't used to be this bad.
No, I mean, although in retrospect, the signs that his religiosity was just godless Anglican prig as opposed to godful Anglican prig was pretty obvious as late as the 90s. But like, I just really thought The Ancestor's Tale was a really good book. I thought The God Delusion even at the time was kind of nonsensical. Not that I thought it was that theism was convincing. I just thought actually the arguments in that book were particularly bad.
Christopher Hitchens was the best of them, obviously, if you ask me. I mean, but
the best
he had his
with
issues.
The worst politics, and the one with the best politics people don't really know that much about, and it's barely associated with him, and that's like Daniel Dennett. And he's not that good of a philosopher, but
I forgot about Dan Dennett. Yeah.
But his politics weren't that bad. Massimo Pagliucci was one of those guys, and he has good politics. But then, I mean, he just went off the reservation and became a Stoic, which I guess, like, instead of finding God, he found Epictetus. So
there are worse things.
There are. Every now and then, I just want to become a classicist.
Yeah, sounds nice to me.
It's interesting in this like weird media landscape, though. I was going to tell you, this is a year that there's been several political movies that aren't on the nose. Edington Weapons is not about what people think it's about. I'm going to argue that.
Interesting.
It is not about the thing people think it is about, but it's actually mostly about, in my opinion, how baby boomers are parasites. And like literally, and alcoholism.
That's a good angle. It's definitely about alcoholism. I think it's about also like any kind of
exploitation of children.
Exploitation of children, addiction. I did not entirely clock the boomer parasite angle, but that makes sense in hindsight.
Just think about the twist ending and what that twist ending wears. And even though that twist ending would be older than that, they all talk like and dress like their high point was in the 70s. And then you go back and look at all the Parasite references throughout the movie, of which there are. I counted at least 20 on the second watch. And I was
it's not subtle.
It's not subtle, but weirdly, that movie isn't obvious propaganda because like you think it's about one thing and it's just a metaphor about that. I mean, you think it's about school shootings. That is so a small part of what that movie's about that it is actively misleading to insist on that.
I think the big reason people think that is because when the guy's having the dream, there's just a big assault rifle.
Yeah.
It's just
and
it's almost like a red herring.
And 217 is thrown in there too, and that's like the name of the bill that was going to ban assault rifles. But I don't think I actually think it is a deliberate red herring by the director. Because people haven't picked up on like the stance that the kids are in and everybody else. That's the stance of kids running from bombs in Vietnam. So it is not even the obvious things in there are not actually all about school shootings. So it's just I think it's been an interesting year for movies in that I think in 2 years in a row, the movies that have been the most interesting to me are not movies that's all coming. Maybe that's just my age. But while there's still a lot of stuff that's not franchises that isn't doing well, it does seem like increasingly non-franchise movies are doing better. Although there'll probably be a movie franchise before we're all done. But it also seems like I'm enjoying watching Disney die slowly. Like,
I'm enjoying that as well.
Like nothing they do seems to be going well for them right now. So
the other trend I've noticed is that like sometimes the marketing for movies is better than the movie itself. That was the issue with Longlegs. That was kind of the issue with Weapons for me as well. I liked Weapons, but the marketing was almost
the marketing's actively misleading. That was true for Barbarian too, though. If you go back to Zach Krieger's first movie, Barbarian, the marketing for that was also actively misleading.
Yeah, I guess that was kind of fake out too. I really enjoyed Barbarian. I think that I enjoyed it so much that it kind of
overhyped you for Weapons.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people who are hyping Weapons watched Barbarian. Honestly, I mean, Barbarian did well, but it did well for like an unexpected cult horror right after COVID. Like, so that doesn't mean a lot of people saw it. And I'm not even sure if there's a physical media version of that movie. I've gotten back into buying DVDs, and I'm like learning how many recent releases don't have imprint DVDs like 2 years after they're out. It's like, wow. Which kind of makes sense, except that like I think people are now realizing how ephemeral streaming services are.
Yeah, I mean, they wonder why people pirate shit. It's not a huge mystery.
Well, funnily enough, when the streaming services were better, they had pretty much ended piracy. Like, not totally, but like in the United States, there's just a lot less piracy for quite a few years, and that's just not true now because I can't even figure out what service a movie's on. Often, by the time I look it up and find what it's on, by the time I get there, within 2 days, it's like already on a different service. And I'm like, God damn it.
And what if you want to buy a movie? What are you going to do? Buy it on Amazon? What if someone, what if the terms of service change or something? It just seems like it's, like you said, it's so ephemeral. It's not even worth it to invest in that type of, like, why would you ever buy a movie that way?
I've gone back to buying physical media. Because I mean, I've kind of I have cut back on buying physical books. As you can see, I just don't have space for them. But even then, I've gotten to where, like, if I can buy a copy that is mine and at least on my hard drive, I'm going to do that over something on Amazon because I can't even back those books up now.
Yeah,
so
it's a no-brainer. You hate to see it. I was going to say my absolute favorite scene in Barbarian is when the there's a sudden change in perspective, and there's the dickhead landlord guy.
Mm-hmm.
When he goes down in his house to find the room where it's pretty clear this guy was like kidnapping women and holding them, and his first reaction is to measure and get the square footage. I love that so much.
Yeah, that movie is about clueless men who increasingly become evil. But I will say the advertising leads you to believe that one of the characters is evil who is not.
Yep.
But anyway, yeah, Longlegs was interesting. I thought Longlegs was a good movie, but its advertising actually hurt it in the sense that I was expecting a completely different kind of movie. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was expecting something a lot more like Silence of the Lambs, which was what they were telling me, and it's not that. It's good for what it is. I like Osgood Perkins a lot, but that advertising campaign was like, that's not Silence of the Lambs at all. Like,
it almost makes you think it's like, yeah, Silence of the Lambs, or like it's some kind of Zodiac serial killer type.
It is not.
Not really.
No. It is more like prestige horror Smile.
Like, yeah.
Like, so it was I did like that the monkey was also misleading, but in a way that I actually appreciated, because that was a horror comedy that was both funny and horrific. So and I was not expecting that from the director of Longlegs. So
it was quite unexpected. I was recovering when I was watching that, and I was smoking a lot of marijuana because that was really the only thing that quelled my stomach cramps. And I don't remember that movie at all. I just remember it being completely insane.
That movie I do remember, but you don't need to remember it. It's gore comedy. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it was great in the fact that I thought I was getting something a lot more like Longlegs, and I was like, okay, Osgood Perkins actually has range, so he's going to be interesting to watch.
I definitely appreciate the high effort attempts at comedy horror that have been taking place recently. I appreciate that for sure. Zach Krieger, I think, is the director's name of Weapons. There's a lot of really funny moments in that movie.
I mean, when you remind yourself that he was one of the
whitest kids
the whitest kids writers, which I was talking about this with JG Michaels on our co-produced Patreon show, and I guess you guys can hear a little bit of it as a tease here. That at first you're like, how the hell did that guy become a horror director? And then when you discover his biography and traumas, and also you think about the weird mixture of wholesomeness and edgelordism of the whitest kids you know, you're like, no, it actually totally makes sense. Like, and better him than the other comedy director that has been dominating horror for the last 5 years, Joseph Gordon-Green. Who, man, I liked a lot of his movies, so he started making horror movies, but I'm just like, don't give him another franchise. Don't do it.
Yeah. Is he? So he's the guy who attempted Halloween.
He did the Halloween trilogy,
right?
And then he did Exorcist Believer, and
I like
the first Halloween of his trilogy, but the second two were like the most hand-fisted humanist liberal shit you've ever seen in your life, and that
Evil has no dies tonight.
Yeah, and also has no place in a Halloween movie. And then Unitarian Universalist Exorcist makes no sense.
It was like a multicultural attempt at an Exorcist movie,
which makes no sense. I'm just like, no, The Exorcist is good when it's a reactionary Catholic movie directed by an atheist director. I don't know what else to tell you. I don't make the rules, but that's why that movie is so awesome.
Yeah. Like, I don't know why it works, but it does.
And it is one of the objectively most reactionary movies ever made, but goddamn, I love it. So
why do you think The Exorcist is reactionary? I'm curious.
because it is a total rejection of modernity, like completely. It is not just like psychology and science is put out there. Liberal humanism is mocked. Like feminism is put down in that movie. Like, and I think what it is Blatty is like a traditionalist Catholic. The writer and the director of the other good Exorcist movie, Exorcist 3. And Friedkin is a spiritual reactionary. And I say this not because I think he had bad politics. He was so reactionary, he didn't have politics.
Like a Nietzsche?
Yeah, I mean, like, he basically thought any attempt to improve the human condition was a waste of fucking time. And that include conservative and reactionary ones. So, like,
I have to say, I'm kind of, sometimes I feel myself drifting towards that position.
Well, here's the thing. That kind of reactionaryism, I personally respect. Because I'm like, if you're just going to opt out, fine. like, I don't blame you. Even, like, if you just become some kind of weird conservative spiritual anarchist and you leave everyone the fuck alone, then, like, I don't care. Like,
as long as you're not hurting anybody,
right?
Honestly, who cares, right?
You're just making movies about how shitty people are. Fine, I'm okay with that. Like,
it's a mood.
And and honestly, I will tell you, like, it's of the types of reactionaryism, it's the one that, like, that's in my brain that I'm just like, yeah, you know what, we should probably just give up. We're not gonna make anything better. Like,
I've obviously, since the last time we spoke, things have gotten worse, and I've also had a bunch of health issues, which I think has colored my perspective a little bit, to where I kind of have to prioritize my own survival in certain ways that I just oftentimes don't have the capacity to even think about politics, or when I do, it's just negative. It's invasive thoughts that are just completely negative.
I get that. In fact, I went through a period of that when I had a similar. We talked about fair. I don't want to out what you had, but I had a similar problem to you. When
I've been open about it, so it's no big deal.
Yeah. So you've had a lot of GI issues that involve surgery. 10 years ago, I had a bunch of GI issues that involved surgery. Actually, probably at about your age. I think I'm almost precisely a decade older than you. Not quite though, but maybe a little bit less. And I was also being attacked by leftists at the time. This is the end of the Obama administration, and I said something uncouth about a person who I didn't know declared themselves non-binary, and it wasn't even intentional, but I got piled on and I reacted stupidly, and I actually I said something snarky like, I'll respect anyone's pronouns even if they wanted to be called it, and I probably shouldn't have said that. But they went after me. People dox people I know. People threatened to dox me, and I had my now ex-wife had cancer at the time, and I was just like, I hate you. Like, I just hate you all. And I took about a year off from podcasting, which was unfortunate, actually, because if I'd have been in the air in the great left-wing podcast boom at that time, it'd probably be a lot bigger than I am now.
I think about that a lot, like all the missed opportunities.
Yeah, I did a bunch of them. I was also behind a paywall without a lot of advertising during that period, and even though I was pretty active in it. But at the same time, I don't know that I want that. Like, I've seen left-wing celebrity and media celebrity ruin a lot of people. Former bread tubers, former academics. The incentives to be niche lead you to very bizarre political terms that I think for a lot of people are partly sincere, but they're framed in such an insincere way. And I'm not very big and I get attacked a lot. The big people I know get attacked for everything all the time, you know?
Yeah. Just perpetually.
Yeah. And some of them are really good about it and they don't really engage. And others just, you know, that becomes their identity. And it is not good for you. It is absolutely not good for you. And I've been worried because so many people post Bernie got politicized by that world, by people who have been either made rich or driven into the ground by it. And there's not been there's people like me who've been, you know, charting a steady course for a very long period of time. But there are not a lot of people like me who came up at that time period who were able to maintain that. Like they either came up after that or before it. And it's an interesting place to be. I was thinking the other day, when I got into the podcasting world, the big things were new atheism, libertarianism, not of the current we're libertarians, but we like authoritarian leaders variety.
We're actually techno-fascists, not libertarian.
Yeah. Libertarians before they realized that about themselves. And what else was big? There was like the left-wing shows of that time period. I mean, between like 2007 and 2012, they were either Pacifica radio shows, or they were like Best of the Left, which was just clips, which is still around. I think the show is still around. Or they were basically just Democratic Party adjacent stuff, and then Occupy happened, and everything changed. And then Bernie happened, and then there was a publicly viable left-wing media sphere, but it was hard to tell the dirtbag left, and for those of you who are listening, that's in quotation marks, from edgy progressives, because it really was hard to tell the difference between them in that world. Like Michael Hobbs and Matt Christman came up at the same time. For those of you who know your podcast figures. But the other thing I wanted to point out at the time that I've seen, because I've been involved in this for so long, these things are counter-cyclic. So who's ever in the White House, what's going to dominate the media sphere from both black money, giving it to them because there's an incentive to give it to them, and from organic growth, is going to be what signals against that. It is not surprising that BreadTube, the dirtbag left, CommieTube, and all that grew up during Trump 1, nor is it surprising that Rogan became the biggest podcast on earth and Candace Owens the third biggest podcast on earth during Trump 2. And it's not surprising that a lot of these things, I mean, I've been talking to 40-year-old leftists, and I'm mentioning like David Pakman's the only one of these guys I know. They don't know about Midas Touch. And I'm like, dude, Midas Touch is literally one of the fastest growing media ventures online right now. It is eclipsing what you guys watch from the Air America radio days, like Majority Report, by a lot. Now we know partially why it had money backing, but you just see this is counter-cyclic. It doesn't actually indicate anything, nor is it got a whole lot of better funding incentives than traditional media. In fact, what it has is less disclosures and oversight. Like,
yeah, and even if you do have an audience that you've cultivated organically, then you get into this whole audience capture situation where you kind of acquiesce to whatever your audience thinks. And I often wonder how many of these people actually kind of resent their audience. I kind of feel that sometimes.
Dave, have you met a creator who doesn't at least a little bit resent their audience?
No, I haven't.
Like, I like my audience, but every now and then when they say something that I'm just like, that's stupid. I always feel like, first they go, how did I fail them? Admittedly. And then I go, how did they fail me? So, but
my audience is like such a hodgepodge of different groups, and that's part of the that's I think part of the problem of why I haven't been super successful with my YouTube channel, is that I haven't cultivated like a hegemonic niche. It's a hodgepodge of people. Some of them are just interested in horror. Some of them may be interested in just kind of really long video essays about subjects that they're interested in. Some of them may watch me because they know I'm a lefty and they like that. But it's such a hodgepodge of people that I'm always alienating somebody when I say something.
I think for me, it's been easier because my brand is I alienate people. Like, it's my brand,
that helps.
That I'm going to do that. But
I was gonna say, like, yeah, the network effect is another thing we talked about. I can't quite remember which interview that was, but we talked about the network effect. That is definitely at play as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you when it was hard for me is it took me a long time, both politically and medially, to establish a separate identity from the ventures that I did with other people in the past. And by a long time, like, I would say 3 of the 5 years I've been on, it's like I was identified with other groups more than what I do. And now that's, I'm still like associated with shows that go on a lot. Like, people associate me with Antifada and with This Is Revolution, because I'm, on This Is Revolution, they don't even call me a guest. I'm just extended crew now, because whenever they need someone to fill air, they're like, Varn, are you free? Is your health okay? Can you come on today?
White Sean King, right?
Yeah, it's White Sean King. I'm the, as I've gotten a little older, gained about 20 pounds and grow my hair out. That's a harder thing to say. But yeah, it's an interesting media landscape. And what's interesting to me is, like, I'm seeing everything. Like, it took a long time for cable to die. Streaming oversaturating itself to death has taken a remarkably short period of time. And, like, the content churning has actually undermined them pretty greatly. And it's hard to see, like, if you look at, if you go and look at, like, you go to any video store and you look at, like, the years of the movies that dominate that video store, it's going to be from the late 90s to about the early aught teens. And I find that I find that fascinating. Like, now, who goes to video store anymore? Admittedly, probably only people interested in that year set. But I'm also seeing that in what's trending. I mean, like, when I see stuff trending on streamers, some of it's new, but some of it's like, oh, a bunch of Zoomers discovered this thing from 30 years ago. Like, and I used to think that was just me being nostalgic. I don't think it is anymore. I think there's such a fractured media culture with such an incentive to overproduce that you do have to go back to a different time, even from streamers, to get something with more quality control. It's just wildly uneven now. There's plenty of good stuff being made. I'm not saying there isn't. I find it. Shudder is a good place to find a lot of it, if I'm honest with you.
I like Shudder.
But there's so much stuff being made that, you can't keep up with it. And there's not even niche consensus anymore as to, like, who you go to. Like, for example, you and I are both in the horror film world. And I think we could probably name the biggest horror podcast. But are any one of them hegemonic? Like, is Faculty of Horror or Evolution of Horror or Dance Macabre or any of that hegemonic in the way that Fangoria was? No.
Right.
Like, so it's just a very interesting media landscape right now. And I do think I do think movies are getting more interesting again. God, I mean, in the teens, I thought that like I was never going to see a movie that had that all movies were either going to be tiny budget or so massive budget that they kind of can't make their money back no matter what unless they go big everywhere on Earth. And neither one of those were making really interesting things at that time period, and it was sort of an interesting. I think that's no longer true. I think we are seeing the streamers produce lower mid-budget movies that are actually interesting, and I think the profit margins on those lower mid-budget movies, mostly horror admittedly, but maybe Naked Gun reboot will bring back comedy too, is reminding people, oh, in a fractured world market where I'm not even sure I can get all these huge movies into China anyway, maybe I should make something a little bit less ambitious that I can make 3 times the money on because I only spent, $3 million on it, or 10 million. That's way too low. 10 million on it, and we can make 70 million, as opposed to spending 500 million and needing to, and then advertising for another 500 million and need to make $1 billion on it for it to even break even.
And horror has always been like that to some degree. For
some reason, except in the 90s. In the 90s, it was not. It tended to lose money. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't actually know that. That's interesting. But what's really interesting now is you see people transitioning from being like a YouTuber into making like a proper horror film with, studio backing. Chris Stuckman comes to mind.
Right.
So but there are other instances of this as well. Like, I can't think of his name. He's a young guy. He's in his early 20s, and he created a short film about the Backrooms, which is like this sort of liminal space horror. And now he's been greenlit to make a full feature length movie. That transition is pretty interesting. We're seeing more of that now. Stuckman is an interesting case because he was like a Jehovah's Witness. He made all of these film reviews and kind of I feel like he built his audience organically, got kind of overwhelmingly successful as a YouTube film critic. And then as he sort of transitioned into being a film director, which is obviously what he wanted to do the entire time, that was his dream. He made a formal announcement basically saying, like, I'm a film director now, and I can't really, I'm not going to be making like super negative reviews anymore. Whereas previously he might do like a 20-minute rant about a terrible film, or, and those would kind of go viral because they're so funny, complaining about a movie for however long. Going into like, oh, I'm a film director now, I can't really alienate anyone I might potentially have a relationship with, or could potentially work with in the future, could put me in an awkward spot. So now I'm only going to talk about movies that really make me feel good. I'm only going to talk about movies that I'm passionate about, that I love. I found that whole transition to be interesting. Yeah, kind of just going off on a tangent.
Yeah, I know. I actually have thought about that a lot because I started thinking about. I took this turn even in my show for completely different reasons, but like the psychological toll of focusing in on what I hate was actually fucking with me. Like, it was changing parts of my personality. And I am not taking it. I won't insult people on my show stance, obviously, but I have taken I need to talk at least 50% of my content needs to come from something that I might be critical of, but I sincerely think people need to engage with. And me just talking about something being fucking stupid is not gonna do that. I know when I did that more, those videos, not that I've ever been super viral, I really haven't ever gone viral to speak, but like some of those videos would get, you know, for an unmonetized channel, 5,000-6,000 views. And if you know about the incentives of unmonetized versus monetized, there's an incentive on YouTube once you're monetized to kind of inflate your numbers with superficial engagement, because just clicking on you gets an ad. And if you know that's why I tell people, you know, who like compare like YouTube to podcasts. I'm like, podcast that gets 10,000 or 20,000 downloads of an episode actually is doing about as well as a YouTube channel that has 1 million views on a video. Mm-hmm. And that's a weird thing to think because those numbers seem astronomically different. But what triggers the engagement number is a higher threshold on podcasts. So it's just something to take to know and to think about. And yeah, Stubman's interesting because I think that attitude is just something you have to take, but it does not help you. There is something specifically about social media that some of it is algorithmic, and we know it's algorithmic. It's been outed multiple times that the algorithm encourages negative engagement because it keeps people on the algorithm, and you can serve them more on whatever app, and you can serve them more ads. You know, these algorithms we know that they can make people go negative, but one of the things I've learned recently, I decided to use an AI feature on my show. I even made a short about this. But by a short, I mean a 15-minute video. That I was using it to turn my videos, my solo videos and some of my interviews into like 30-second to a minute and a half clips to put on YouTube Shorts, Instagram. Mm-hmm. And the engagement I got was, and I was, you know, I got interested in, at first I was pissed off, then I got interested in who these people were, but was basically 21-year-old chud dudes just calling me stupid. And like, and going and looking like, oh, the first thing you listen to is like the Von Mises Institute and the Joe Rogan podcast. And then I realized that the algorithm was deliberately giving content to oppositional viewers, but it only did that on shorts. I mean, that when the longer form viewers, it would be more likely to give you the people who listen to similar content. But in short form, it was giving it to just piss people off unless you trained it to give you like funny videos, which were mm-hmm. nondescript. And I also noticed that on Instagram. Like, so I quit making reels because I'm like, I'm doing this to advertise the longer shows. But if I'm only getting people who are never going to watch the longer shows because this is all negative engagement, why the fuck am I doing it? I mean, there is a chance that some of these could go viral. And there were some people like, oh, I shared this with my Zoomer cousin and they finally listened to you because you were finally under 5 minutes. And I was like, cool, but the amount of negative engagement just made it not worth it. Like, because I didn't see a notable increase in views for the videos these were for, and sometimes the short videos would go viral, and no one would go watch the long videos, and most of the comments were just insults. And the reason why I started trying to figure out who was insulting me is not because I like wanted to stalk them. I was like, what's their point of view even? Because I couldn't even tell.
Yeah. Where are they even coming from?
Where they were coming from, like, oh, these are all young conservatives, and and like I'd even try to engage them. I'm like, okay, what's your issue? You know, what do you want to talk about? Like, nothing. And I'm just like, yeah, you're just reacting to someone who disagrees with you with an insult. You probably don't have the wit or carry capacity or social intelligence to like actually, you know, engage with anything. And I don't really want you in my audience. So why? But I noticed that with the algorithm too. But if you think about how, like on X in particular, but also someone on Facebook, the way to blow up is to get ratioed.
Absolutely.
Like, and people think they're hurting you, and then all of a sudden you wake up and you have 80,000 followers. Like, yep. It's crazy.
Yeah, because people hate follow you, but then also your
other
content
people will
starts to
follow
get
you to like counter ratio the people ratioing
exactly.
you.
Yeah.
Like, and I've thought about it. I accidentally did that once on my old Twitter account because I said, you know, claiming that JFK was secretly sympathetic to communism is like the Birchers claiming he was secretly sympathetic to anti-globalism. And, you know, it's structurally the same. And that's been the only time I got ratioed by left-wingers who are like in the left-wing conspiracy orbit, which...
There are really that many people who think that JFK was sympathetic to communism? That's wild.
No, but I do think there's that many JFK conspiracists, and they just didn't like being compared to Birchers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, you know, my whole take on JFK, just to be, well, we're digressing. We can go back to Stubman in a second. Is that the reason why he's such a key figure for American politics is he died so early in his regime and he was so pretty, he's a cipher for whatever the fuck you want him to be. And that's not just in conspiracy world. That's like across the board. Because I'm like, I've always looked at JFK policies. I'm like, the motherfucker was the first, he's a proto neoliberal. Like,
absolutely. Yeah. He's kind of like the Kurt Cobain of American presidents in that way.
Yeah, that's true. I had the hard realization in my late 20s that Kurt Cobain, if he had lived, would have made new metal.
Like, yeah. And it would have been amazing.
I would have been all into it, but I'm just saying,
I would have been into it.
And I'm not anti-new metal, but I was going through this phase and I listened to, I think when Grohl and Love got over their shit, even though they hated each other long enough to release like 2 or 3 of the unreleased recordings from the album that wasn't made. And I was like, God damn, that sounds like it's heading in a new metal direction. So yeah, Kurt's like that. I wrote something about him on the 20 years anniversary of his death, which is now, I think even that's almost 10 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like going back and listening to I watched a documentary on him. I listened to a bunch of old interviews with him, you know, and for me at my age, I would have been 14 when he died. And so he was super influential in my like musical taste. Like I swear to God, when we got into indie music, we were just basically going through like, what did Kurt Cobain suggest? Let's go listen to the Meat Puppets and everything from the SST catalog and everything from the Discord catalog. Discord being the record label, not the app.
Right.
Youngins. You know, so that's what we did. But I just had this realization that I had done that too with Kurt, because Kurt's politics made no fucking sense. Like I tried to like figure out what his politics were. I'm like,
was he just kind of like a rad lib? He was like shockingly intersectional. If you like read some of the stuff he wrote,
he was a rad lib, but not even that coherent, because I don't think anybody in that, I mean, I do think we have to go back to the politics of the early aughts when people are like, why are Gen X so reactionary? And I'm like, they didn't have a politics when they were young. Like, because, and I think it makes perfect sense. Like, they saw Bill Clinton come to power. They saw the Soviet Union fall. They saw the Atari Democrats become the DNC. Like, why would they believe shit about shit? Like, you know, like, so, I mean, when you think about that, like people like Matt Taibbi make a lot of sense. Actually, I'm not defending him. I'm just saying like the cultural milieu. And I think Kurt would have been a rad lib and he'd be complaining about wokeness today. Maybe not though. Because he was so intersectional, he might not have gone that way.
I don't think he would have. You know, he was kind of an edgelord, but he was like a liberal edgelord. He would like make out with guys to make homophobes uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he sure as hell trolled Axl Rose. I remember that.
Yeah. Awesome.
and defended Michael Stipe before he was officially out. So I mean, here's another thing. Left-wing edgelordism is something that people have only recently remembered could be a thing.
Yeah.
Because there was such a strong response to irony racism, which was being used to point out racism, but sometimes was used to to hide it in like the late aughts, early aught teens. That like all the left-wing edgelords went away, or they became Bill Maher. Like, which, I mean, I guess he was always a centrist edgelord, but still, like,
you either die Kurt Cobain or you live long enough to see yourself become Bill Maher
or Ricky Gervais. Like, yeah, I don't know, man. It's back to that Summit thing. I think it's interesting that we are seeing a lot more crossover directors in general, and also, you know, there have always been auteurs in horror, and there have been time periods where you could go from horror into more mainstream cinema. But from the 80s to about a decade ago, there wasn't a lot of that. I mean, I can think of like one or two directors, but very few. And that seems to now, like, if you want to be taken seriously as a dramatic director in particular, you make a horror movie first. Like,
yeah. It's a good way to get your shoe in. Kubrick is definitely kind of a precursor to that, like with The Shining. I feel like there is more of an incentive now when you're making a horror movie to make it kind of like almost overtly a social commentary type movie, and I don't think those incentives. That is kind of a new thing.
It's a new thing, and
it's a
new thing and an old thing, because if you go back, from the prestige horror, and I put that in, or elevated horror, I put that in scare quotes because I don't like the term, because like half of everything from the 70s would actually count as that.
Same,
but 70s horror really was pretty filled with, like, I went back and watched old Romero movies that weren't his zombie movies. Like, I mean, we all know
that's a good point.
Like, they're all message movies. Like, but in the 80s, that goes away or becomes explicitly reactionary. Like, if they're message movies, they're reactionary message movies, or they're deliberately apolitical. Because Wes Craven and John Carpenter are both fairly left-wing for people of that time period, but you wouldn't know it from their movies. Like,
depends on the movie, right?
Well, They Live, it's obvious. What is Wes Craven's movie where it's obvious he's a left-winger? I mean, a less liberal left-winger. I can't think of one, honestly. Like, maybe Last House on the Left. Maybe, but that's a remake of another movie. So,
I was thinking about rewatching New Nightmare recently, because I know that's kind of like the meta one that is almost kind of feels like Scream maybe ripped it off.
Yeah. Well, I would say, like, Scream is meta in dialogue and a little bit in plot, but like the meta-ness of New Nightmare is like it's not just meta in dialogue and plot references. It's literally we're moving into the real world. So, yeah, man, I have been. That has been a franchise I have been glad that they have not figured out a way to successfully reboot.
Oh man, don't say it.
I mean, did they try to reboot? Yeah, they did with Jackie Earle Haley. They tried to reboot Nightmare on Elm Street and it didn't go it was bad.
Yeah.
I mean, that was in the Platinum Dunes reboot era, though. That's also when they actually, like, when they tried to reboot Jason and it was actively bad. And it's hard to fuck up a Jason movie because there's not much you have to get right for that.
How do you mess that up?
Like,
shameful.
You don't even have to have anything like plot consistency for those things to work. But yeah, I mean, I'm always going back and forth. Maybe this is an interesting topic and we can come back to directors today. But we see all these breakout directors. But I am thinking about maybe part of the reason why it was hard to be a breakout director of horror movies it was not hard to be a breakout horror writer in the 90s and aughts. William and etc. That's clear. But it does seem like it was hard to be, and it was not hard to be a breakout horror actor. In fact, the trajectory, if you were a teen star, teen sitcom on the WB or horror movie, maybe you'll get taken seriously as an actor when you're 30. Like, you know, like that was
Johnny Depp.
Yeah, Johnny, right. From Johnny Depp to Jennifer Love Hewitt. Like that was a pretty clear trajectory. But it seemed like director jail. And I think about why that may be. And horror movies in the aughts, horror movies in the 90s, particularly after Scream, were remarkably safe. They were explicitly teen movies. Right?
It's peak neoliberalism at that point in time.
Yes. And they're shiny and they're glossy, and I mean, like if you wanted to see something that was edgy, scary, you wouldn't watch a horror movie. You'd watch some weird indie movie but you know, our Event Horizon or whatever the fuck. Like, but in general, what you had was like 50 screen clones, some of which were good, some of which were terrible. And unfortunately, now that we've seen in the neo slasher revival that we've seen after the revival of horror, we have gotten to the 90s meta commentary remarkably quickly. AKA whatever the fuck came out with this new I Know What You Did Last Summer, which was just winking at the audience the entire time.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I heard it was horrendous.
I don't know a single person who likes it. Now, I also don't think the first one was all that good. Like it was in the lower middle tier of Scream knockoffs. So
right, it's a cheesy slasher.
But I do think like we've tried to speed run that. But I do wonder if maybe the aesthetics of horror movies were just really shitty during those days. Because I do think about like, if you think about what horror movies looked like in the late 90s, not in the early 90s, but in the late 90s, they look like TV sitcoms. But they do. Like, it's like they have the same filmography as Dawson's Creek, not just the same actors. They're just slightly darker. And then in the aughts, they are actively ugly. Everything is filtered green or gray or brown. Like,
and most importantly, they stop using squibs at a certain point.
Right. It's just it's just a very unfortunate time period for horror movies. So, and then if you think about what the horror auteurs were releasing during the late 90s and the aughts, so what are Carpenter and Craven releasing then? Sam Raimi is making Spider-Man movies, but
and they're very good.
And they're good. No, we're not. But Carpenter and Craven seem to be getting smaller and smaller budgets, and their movies just look like shit.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's part of it. I've been trying to figure it out because the thing that people go, what about today? Horror movies are made on cheap today, and like that's absolutely true. But your iPhone has a better camera than a mid-tier professional grade camera in 1995.
Absolutely. It's much easier to make a low budget horror movie today than it was in the late 90s. Right. And for it to look good. Look, I watched all the witch films. I know what bad horror movies from the 90s look like. Like or even going back and watching hit shows. I was literally when I was recovering, I was watching Pluto because I'm kind of, I'm kind of broke these days. And they were showing the Chappelle Show. #1 show on Comedy Central at that time. Even for 2002, it looks like shit. Like its production values are nothing. Yeah. And you wouldn't even really like, I didn't really notice it at the time, but
I
yeah,
didn't
you're
notice it
right.
at all. And when I went back and watched it today, I'm like, oh my God. I didn't know if maybe it's I can notice it more because it's in high def, but I don't think it's just that.
Mhm.
Like it's
part of it. It's also just what the standards were at the time. It just didn't phase you because everything was kind of like that or worse.
Or worse. Right. I mean, and you just think like I can make a video like this right here, had a better camera in clarity. You know,
I think about that a lot, and I like kind of in a when I'm having my interstitial existential crisis that happens every once in a while, like why I have access to technology that people would have killed for in even just like 20 or 30 years ago, and I'm like not using it. I'm not utilizing it to its fullest potential. um I think about that a lot, and especially like with the type of things I cover on my channel that are, I'll talk about movies, but I also try to cover like um, things that typically go under the radar of a lot of people, like just weird
Mhm.
online projects and occasionally ARGs and things like that. Um, and I come from a background where I do tend to intellectualize these things. Um, my degree is in liberal arts, with
Mine too, sadly.
sort of like a focus on like lit theory, and I think about like um, how to think about um, these type of projects in that lens. And I keep coming back to the same like recurring thought in my head, which is that like these like multimedia art projects, um, whatever you want to call them, like they haven't like reached their full potential. Like, especially with like alternate reality games and things like that. Um, there are they had a sort of golden age where there were a lot of pretty interesting ones, or at the very least, things that were getting a lot of buzz. Um, may not necessarily have been like good in an artistic sense, but they were getting a lot of buzz because it's kind of a new medium, um, like Marble Hornets and things like that. Um, but yeah, I just keep coming back to this thought that we're not living up to the full potential of what this type of experience could be. Oftentimes, like people, these artists, these creators, um, they're like a lot of them are young people. So I try not to like be super negative about. I often like if I'm covering an independent art project, or I'm usually talking about it positively. I'm not like ripping it apart,
Mhm.
because I understand that it's like a labor of love, and there's really no budget for the most part. Um, but like a common theme that I come across is like just using like puzzles and codes for their own sake instead of making it work within the context of the narrative. That's a common problem. Um, people like, especially like inexperienced artists, kind of defer to this like cryptic code breaking type paradigm, um, because they think it makes their project more mysterious, when oftentimes it's really just it makes it less accessible,
Mhm.
for no good reason. Like I'm all for things that are a little bit inaccessible and maybe kind of heady, but they often fall into this pitfall where they just add puzzles to their narrative for no good reason. Um,
J.J. Abrams has a lot of sins to account for.
Yeah, he might be responsible for that in some ways. That's a. I didn't think about that angle, but the whole mystery box thing, yeah, for sure.
Well, I mean, it's like people who want to do something Lynchian, but they end up doing something that's basically like a puzzle, and I'm like, that's not like there. I hate to tell you this, but there's no solution to Lost Highway or Mulholland Drive. Like
there's no logical solution to it,
right? The solution is in vibes and recurring nightmares. It's not in like figuring out a narrative arc to make it work. It's not there.
You can talk about it in terms of theme or subtext, but if you try to break it down plot wise, things become unintelligible fairly quickly. This I covered a series called Petscop that's kind of like that, and people their expectations, they kind of like got built up because this series would release a few videos and then wait like 6 months and then they'd release some more videos, and so expectations got built up over time, and when the resolution wasn't necessarily coherent in a sort of logical way, everything wasn't like wrapped up in a neat little package, a lot of people got upset. And I would say in my analysis, guys, it's not a logical puzzle for you to solve. It's sort of like this impressionistic thing that has very weighty subtext about abuse and nostalgia and childhood, in the format of what appears to be a video game that was created by somebody. And so he's using like a game engine as a kind of way to do environmental storytelling, which I thought was really interesting. And it was kind of Lynchian in the sense that there's no puzzle to solve. And in fact, that's kind of a theme of the work, is that it's not a puzzle to solve. It's kind of it's this weird impressionistic thing that leaves you with a sense of sadness and maybe kind of like an uncanny sense of fractured identities, things along those lines. So yeah, that is kind of a pet peeve of mine, is people trying to like logically analyze everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think that leads to, I think, unfortunately, a lot of, what we might call alt project directors are catering to that need, because it's in itself its own form of audience capture. The audience capture isn't this ideological; it's also aesthetic. And it's. I do think we are slightly moving away from it. I think a lot of the movies this year, there are more movies this year that seem okay, not explaining everything than I've seen in a while.
It's a good sign. And
that is a good sign. I also think we are benefiting from the collapse of the movie market, which unfortunately is a benefit, is like saying I'm benefiting from the collapse of a global trade system. And in most ways we're absolutely not, but I think in movies we actually kind of a little bit are. Because there has been a need, or even an economic necessity, to flatten out most films because of the amount riding in their budgets. They could not be very specific because they had to have the most broad audience, not just within one culture, but basically within all of them. And I think after COVID, and I think RRR, speaking of reactionary movie, that's a straight up reactionary Hindevadas movie, but very enjoyable. Started, I think, indicating, one, Americans will watch foreign movies, which I'm like, we've already been through this before, though. Didn't Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon teach everybody that? But two, that I also think we're just in this time period, like the big tentpole Marvel movies. It's not that they're not making money. It's just they're not making nearly enough money to justify their budgets. And that's the big difference. But they clearly were for a long time. That was true for the Fast and Furious. That, you know, and a lot of those franchising movies have just gone kind of belly up over and over and over and over again. The exceptions have been weird. Mario and what's that? And Minecraft movies both did very well with kids, although for strange reasons.
Mm-hmm.
The Barbie movie, thank God, did not lead to like, and I was totally afraid because they were trying to greenlight like 85,000 Mattel movies, and apparently those have just kind of not gotten off the ground.
Yeah, right. I remember seeing a list of all these different properties that they were going to make films out of, and I can't think of a single one that's come to fruition.
No, I actually, yeah,
make a really good Monopoly movie. I'm all for it.
Like on the level of Clue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I was thinking about the Mortal Kombat movie actually, and I was like, this is what I was thinking about, because I was like, man, we were in like Mortal Kombat 10 in like 2007. I mean, and that's almost 20 years ago. How the fuck is this video game relevant to these kids? Because I don't even know how they've been exposed to it. So, because like, I'm like, is there a big Mortal Kombat like you would know? I quit playing anything other than cell phone games over a decade ago.
No, I think the Mortal Kombat. So they made one a few years ago, and they're making a new one now with Johnny Cage.
They seem to be doing well. I just don't know how the hell these kids are exposed to their source material.
I think it's a nostalgia act for millennials.
Okay. That's sad.
I mean, that's the reason I watched the new Mortal Kombat. I was like, okay, I'll see if this is any good.
I mean, the first ones weren't any good.
No, they weren't. Yeah.
But then again, the Mario movie was decent, and we all know about the first Mario movie. We don't speak of it.
You know, I would like to revisit that. I watched that one with my wife a few months ago, and say what you will about it, the props and the effects, the outlandishness, the incomprehensible plot, which there is some like lefty subtext going on too that is baffling to me. But if the director, I think, is a leftist.
Yeah.
I would much prefer that than a polished Super Mario movie.
That movie's interesting to me because it. God, I want to sound like the kind of people that Red Letter Media complain about, but it's like between the prequels and the sequels to Star Wars. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say I realize Star Wars is a movie for kids that we all over romanticize anyway, except for the second. The Empire Strikes Back, which happens to just be a 70s movie rebrandished as a movie for kids in the 80s. But and even as a kid, it was my favorite one. Although I liked the Ewoks when I was 5, so whatever. Like
I did too.
You know, my point though is that the prequels are ambitious. The sequels are requels that literally damage the entirety of the franchise. Like they make the entire story arc make no sense.
And they're almost shockingly cynical.
Yeah.
To the point where I'm like, I thought I was a nihilist, but
no, I mean,
this is a bit much even for me.
Right. And like even the Rian Johnson one, which I agree is the most interesting of the three, despite the backlash against it, it isn't that good. Like it's
No,
just kind of had an idea in its head. Like
he was working with the material he had to work with, right? So he had an existing plot that he had to either reaffirm or subvert, and he decided to subvert it. That's the right decision. But there's only so much you can do with these archetypes.
right. And then again, you had you had some interesting things in Rogue One, a movie that I like. A lot of people, I know a lot of people don't, but I do. It leads to Andor, and that's great material. I will agree it's great, but I will also say I agree with Plinkett on Red Letter Media about this too. You guys can tell what I've been watching lately. That Andor is so good it fucks up the rest of the franchise too, because like it makes stuff in the other movies seem remarkably flippant compared to that story. And it's like, that's great. It's an interesting shared world. I like it as an art project, but you have ripped the coherence out of this world. You can't have like, this is tonally, and the weight of this is so different, particularly when you think about the fact that Cassian's whole storyline is basically like a subtext to this flippant journey of Skywalker and the New Hope. It's like it doesn't work as well as it seems when you try to put it back together. And wow, I'm on the digression. What were we talking about?
I don't know, but yeah, Andor is interesting. I need to finish watching what's out there. It is, but it's like, yeah, you have these sci-fi fantasy films, which are more fantasy than sci-fi, really.
Absolutely.
And then a series about the inner workings and the bureaucracy of fascism. Basically, it's like those. One of these things is not like the other.
You took the subtext of something that, I mean, I admit that Lucas will say that like he would say that like, you know, the Jedi are the Viet Cong in the first movie, but
or like the Ewoks are the Viet Cong, and
right, which is
or whatever. Yeah,
yeah.
It's a little degrading, but whatever.
Yeah, whatever. But Star Wars is Flash Gordon plus Dune. With the Flash Gordon superficiality winning out in the framing, and then Joseph Campbell literally being used as a blueprint to tie it all together. Like that's how it's built, right? Flash Gordon, Dune, a hero with 1,000 faces. Lucas has even admitted it. That's what it is. Like it's like Dune with all the intrigue and interesting parts stripped out. Like okay.
And everything since the original trilogies is almost like a concerted effort to demystify the original movies,
Right.
In different ways. Some are more successful than others, but they all generally tend to demystify the mythical vibe of the original trilogy.
Yeah. Oh, I remember what we were talking about. You were making the argument, the first Mario Brothers movies, and I said it's kind of like the prequels. It's ambitious but incoherent, and people didn't give it. I guess I would agree with you in that we talk about how bad that movie is, but at least it's fucking interesting and weird.
It's weird,
but, right? Like.
It's noteworthy. You don't. So many things are just bland pieces of crap.
No, but this was like you made a weird Picasso that smells bad because half of it's made of shit. But like you know, but yeah, I mean, you know, another movie that's like that. Since we're just spitballing here, Tank Girl. That's another movie that bombed and is weird and I mean, it's also its source material is weird, and it doesn't have a lot to do with its source material.
I haven't seen that.
It's not good. It's not good, but it is interesting. It's interestingly bad, and I will take interestingly bad over blandly mediocre, even almost any day.
Absolutely.
And I would think that about Mario, and I think that about the prequels too. I think the prequel. I mean, I agree they're fucking weirdly racist. I noticed this at the time. I was talking about Alien Jar Jar Sambo like in 2000. But also they are interesting. Like there is like trying to make a kids movie about trade negotiations is fucking ambitious.
Trade negotiations and the downfall of democracy. It is insanely ambitious. Yeah, my opinion's not really unique. He shouldn't have directed them. He should have written them and had somebody else direct them.
To be fair, I can't think of a single thing outside of A New Hope that Lucas should have directed.
Yeah, and he kind of knows it.
Right. He's a good producer and he's a good writer. Well, asterisk. I think he's a good concept writer. I think his actual dialogue's not that great. But
dialogue's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not just in Star Wars where it shows up. But in general, the Star Wars movies, but man, that is some you know what's funny? I'll defend some of the new Star Treks. Like there's elements of Star Trek Discovery I like. There's elements of Picard I like. There's elements of Picard I hate. But we have watched two series. Ironically, J.J. Abrams shows up here too with both of them.
He's in escape. He is inevitable.
Yeah. He's like the AI of aughts film. No, if you watch these movies and like watch them seriously, you're just stuck thinking like that time period couldn't let those aesthetics stand as they were. I mean, and by that time period, I mean 2008 to 2020, basically. Because the new Star Trek movies that were directed by J.J. Abrams, at least the first two, they were watchable. They were enjoyable. I even kind of liked them, but they were not Star Trek. Everything significant to Star Trek, from its utopianism to its we all act mostly from our head, except from Jonathan Frakes. That was all gone from those movies, and it didn't. And in a way, like people will accuse that of like Deep Space Nine, which is obviously kind of a rip off of Babylon 5. But I'm even like Deep Space Nine still has got more original Gene Roddenberry Star Trek DNA than the post Abrams any Star Trek has had. And I've also seen this with Star Wars. Like, I don't really know what makes Star Wars anymore.
Nothing, because it's been totally demystified.
Right. And a lot of the shows feel lost. Like, you know, I felt good about I enjoyed the first season of The Mandalorian. The second season was okay.
Same.
By the third season, it's like, what are you doing? And the Book of Boba Fett, I'm like, you actually have a good story in here in the flashbacks, but most of this feels like it was written by 50 different people with no clear antagonist.
That is a big problem. Is there just needs to be more infrastructure and support for just a writer director with a singular vision, and no one wants to do it because it's such a huge risk. It's much easier to sort of hedge your bets and not take that risk and kind of just have a workshop, a rotating group of people who punch it up. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think this is interesting what we have right now, because I think like we were seeing the epic fantasy becoming dominant, like how many epic fantasy shows from The Wheel of Time to whatever that Lord of the Rings thing is. It's
You're right.
I watched it even. I don't think it was good, but I watched it. But it seems like those shows are massive money losers now, and I think we're also going to start seeing that with Star Wars, because it's just over fucking saturated on the channels. And like, I used to get excited about a new Star Wars series, but when there was like 7 in a year, I'm like, I don't care. I can't keep up.
Who cares?
Like, I don't. Yeah. I
call
watch
me
Andor,
when
that's it.
call me when they do something really out of left field. Hire a director and let that director do whatever the hell he wants, he or she wants, you know. They aren't going to do it. It's too risky. They've already oversaturated things to such a degree that it's like kind of meaningless. So I don't really know what the risk is, like, but it's all just numbers in an Excel spreadsheet to them.
Yeah. I mean, they're gonna be, those scripts are gonna be written by AI soon. Come on, like,
right.
Maybe
they'll be better. I don't know. At least it'll be fucking weird.
I will. Yeah. I was talking to JG Michaels about like the choice for the new Spider-Man movie, not the new animated one, but the new like mainline one, and they've picked the most unpopular storyline.
What are they doing? Brand New Day?
The erasure of Mary Jane's Spider-Man and Mary Jane's marriage plotline, a brand new day,
Brand New Day or something like that, right?
Yeah, like literally considered one of the worst Spider-Man plotlines ever made.
Because it's just a very self-aware retcon.
One that doesn't even make sense in the film, like in the current films, because they haven't even got that far yet. Like, why are you doing that? Like, so it's just, I'm not sad that it does seem, because it's not just the Marvel movies. I mean, the Spider-Man without Spider-Man-averse over at Fox is imploded.
That was always
the James Gunn Superman movie did okay. I mean, it was. I don't think it's about what people think it is about, because it was not scripted at the right time, probably. But
the Israel-Palestine subtext.
Yeah, that might have come into it, but they would have been finishing the script when that started.
Well, look, even if it's not explicitly about that, it's pretty clear that like that sort of, it's pretty clear what Superman would do in this situation.
Well, no, that's the thing. It's like when people complain about Superman as woke, I'm like, what do you think you're watching, Batman? Like, like Superman is all American, but he was like an all American working class boy written by Jews who was like literally talking about defending them against like the neighborhood bullies and parafascists and shit. Like that's always been what Superman has been. It's been a liberal vision of a positive person from the center of the country, and the center of the countryness in him being so liberal and progressive is on purpose. Like, because it's, you know, it's an argument about, it really is what the heart of America is, blah, 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 even though he's an immigrant alien and you know, he fights for the little guy, blah, blah. Like, the problem with Superman is obvious. Also, he's a god on our planet. So like, it's hard to have any real conflict with him.
Yeah, he's too perfect. And so the way you remedy that is you limit his powers and you make him flawed in a way. And, you know, I suppose his flaw in the new James Gunn version is that he's just a bit naive about how the world works.
Which is his flaw in like the 50s and 60s version of Superman too, actually. He's naive. That's how Lex Luthor gets it over on him. Which I think it's fine. I mean, am I ever going to love a Superman movie after the Richard Donner movies? No. I mean, you know, I grew up with that Superman. I even like the bad ones when Superman's like reversing time and fighting the Soviet Union. And, you know, even though I'm pro-Soviet Union, obviously, but like, I wasn't as a kid because I was 5.
Yeah.
And Richard Pryor in one of them is pretty fucking hilarious. I mean, like but are they, I like those movies because they're nostalgia to my early childhood. Like, I don't think they're good. Like, I like Flash Gordon for the same reason. The second time, I love that movie, but is it good? No, absolutely not. I won't even. I watched The Last Starfighter. Is it good? It's better than I remember, than I was afraid it was going to be, but no, it is not good. I mean, like, so, I think we're seeing a lot of that, but man, the nostalgia attempts are getting to me. And they're not really, I don't think a lot of them are sticking. I'll give you an example of that. Trying to reboot Jurassic. I mean, I'm sure that movie did okay because all those Jurassic movies did okay. But rebooting Jurassic World only a year and a half after it just ended and flopped is
incredibly cynical.
It's incredibly cynical. It makes me feel bad for Scarlett Johansson's career trajectory. I didn't want to see her go down like that. I feel like she's going to be a Redbox actress before we're all done.
Right.
Like, but it's, and yeah, I'm getting hopeful in that these things aren't sticking anymore. Like, but I don't know what that says about cinema, because I actually don't know who even watches movies now. I used to teach a film class. I taught it for 6 years. I took a break this year, but I taught a film class of high school students for 6 years, basics of film and literature, that sort of thing. And that class has gotten less people interested in it every year. And it's a class where you read one book and watch a bunch of movies and get lectures on movie literacy in between. That's all you do, like, as a high schooler. You know what I mean? Like, and when I first started teaching it, it was slammed. My other classes are slammed, right? I'm a popular teacher. But that class still had decent enrollment, but it capped about 3 years ago, you know? And a lot of kids just tell me they don't watch movies. Like they tell me now they don't read books, which they've been telling me they don't read books for like 10 years. And I'm not surprised by that. But right. I am surprised they don't watch movies.
I think part of it is like, who watches movies, right? Film nerds watch movies. People who log on to Letterboxd and share their thoughts about every movie they've ever seen. And some young kids are film nerds for sure. But there are so many other options, and they've been conditioned to expect immediate gratification, and their attention spans, brains have been fried.
2 minutes long at best.
Yeah, their brains have been fried from TikTok. So I think your average kid probably associates movies with something their parents make them do as a sort of bonding activity. And that feels like kind of a chore to them.
Well, they're not film literate either. I mean, to be fair, most people, even in the past, didn't know when they were film literate or not. They didn't have a vocabulary for it. That's what I would do. But they would pick it up immediately. And I found it was harder and harder to teach these kids what was going on, even in TikToks. Like, so it's, I have known a lot. I am seeing a lot of younger Zoomers turn on social media. I don't know if that's good or bad. I really don't know if it's good or bad. And by turn on social media, I don't mean they like turn on Twitter and Facebook. A lot of them aren't on that anyway. I mean, turn on TikTok and Instagram. And it's not just conservatives or liberals. It's like kind of across the board. But I don't know what they're replacing it with.
That's the question.
Like, it's like, because the other thing I can say, maybe we can talk about a little bit this, more than me, but the hype about video games is a brand new art form, which was going to like maintain narrative art and be interactive, that I heard for 2 decades as upcoming. I don't hear shit about that anymore. Like, and I don't hear that much about new games, like, or anything. It may be because, again, there's your cell phone, there's consoles, there's computer. Maybe the market's too fractured, and there's also the fact that like games are released obviously incomplete, so that you have to buy the rest of the game later. And there's the fact that anyone has access now to any game that's ever existed, so you can get addicted to a game from 35 years ago. But it does seem like they're not like there's not big game hits anymore. I mean, am I wrong about that? I could be an old man talking out my ass. Like, totally.
You're not entirely wrong. I think it's suffering from the same issue that films are suffering from, in the sense that AAA games, the amount of money required to really produce a AAA game at this point, because the expectations have become so expansive, is it's a massive undertaking, and therefore it is a huge risk, unless you are producing something that is essentially a sure thing. Like the next Grand Theft Auto is a sure thing. Everyone's going to get it. Everybody's going to get it. I will be there with bells on. But there's a spectrum, right? And on one end you have a polished AAA game like Grand Theft Auto, and on the other end you have these weird indie games, and there is a proliferation of them that may even be one or two people working on it. And don't get me wrong, occasionally those can be like breakout successes, especially relative to how much went into it. But as far as it being the height of like at the sort of avant-garde of like artistic value, I mean, it's not, it happens. Like I think Disco Elysium is pretty great.
Yeah, that game's like what, 5 years old now?
Yeah, right.
Like, I mean, like, yeah, I do think they're still great games. I don't want to sound like I don't think that. I again, I don't know that I would know, but there's even some great cell phone games like that. Like, so I would know about that. But it does not seem like people, the risk to reward on a lot of things. I mean, even music, like how many bands are there? There's still new music being made by bands. It still exists. But the amount of overhead and the cost of expenditure and the amount of socializing that a lot of these kids just don't do to train yourself to be in a band scene like we were in the 90s. That's a big ask. But it leads to this paradox we were talking about earlier, where like we have all this equipment now that makes it a lot easier to do. It is easy to make music now. Right? It is. Like I have composed stuff for my own show.
Yeah,
with GarageBand. Like it is not hard. And I am only trained in playing drums. That's all I can do. So I can just count beats. But so it is funny how people talk about this and how few bands there are. And every now and then, like there'll be a new band. There's like a lot of retro bands coming out that are young, that sound very much like the 60s or the 70s or the 80s.
Yeah, that's
and they're like
my pet peeve. I can't stand that.
and they sound but what's frustrating is they sound exactly like it. I mean, they're super talented, like these people, but they're such music nerds that they're just doing replication. And I've studied the history of art enough to know that usually if a culture is doing that, it's a bad sign.
It is, dare I say, a sign of decadence.
Yeah, I know. A word that I like, and everyone gets mad that I like it. I think people are beginning to resist that less, but people are just like, oh, what are you talking about decadence? That sounds conservative. I'm like, have you looked around and looked at your infrastructure, arts, education, how much food you can afford, what it costs to do anything. Even good stuff is made shittily. I'd be it does feel like a lot of the cyberpunk shit from the 80s did call some of this stuff, and that was decadent. That was decadent. Just, you know,
I mean, there's a few things going on if we want to like analyze it in like a materialist way. Obviously the cost of living has gone up in a number of ways, right? Like healthcare, housing, education, food across the board, right? Therefore, people's time becomes more scarce because they have to work more to make ends meet. Therefore, they have less time to consume this stuff. So they have to be really judicious about how they spend their time. But also, they don't really, like, people don't really have the wherewithal to plan ahead as much either. So
that's the big thing for me. Like, because I agree with you on the materialist stuff. I just want to make one point, though.
Yeah.
In the 70s, people were starting working in their teens and still doing this because that was an area of stagflation. It looks like we're entering another area of stagflation.
Mm-hmm.
But Zoomers don't have... There are slightly more Zoomers that have jobs now, actually. I work with a lot of them. But by and large, Zoomers don't get their first job till they're like 2022. And so that's what's more confusing to me. But maybe it's the inability to plan. That's what I want to... Yeah, I'm going to get back to you. But I was thinking about that because I think that seems to be more the issue. Because like everything seems... I've been stuck in a student loan nightmare for 15 years. And the rules change now every 2 fucking years.
Yeah.
You have no idea what you owe. You know, like your interest rate's variable between 8 and 13% on now something that's like the equivalent, well, now to a car, but when you got it to a house. And the rules change all the time. The courts are constantly like no part of American bureaucratic, like you can't predict what your power bill is going to be because if there's a data center, your power might jump to $500 a month from $100 to $150 a month. So that inability to plan seems ubiquitous.
It is, yeah, for sure.
And there is no, and politicians just seem incapable. I mean, we're recording on the last heady days of August of 2025. This will come out in the end of September of 2025. And if you're listening to the audio show, it'll be probably in October. But so hell, half the stuff I'm mentioning will probably already be forgotten about by this point. But we're living in a time period like today. There's literally a rumor that the president was dead.
Mm-hmm.
You know, of natural causes. He's not, just playing golf, I guess. Although he does seem to be having some health problems.
He doesn't look too good.
No, but what do we expect 80-year-olds in the office? I mean, like, but you know, I am thinking about a political culture. A friend of mine put it to me, and I'll turn it back to you to make your point. I'm sorry to speak over you.
No, that's cool.
But a friend pointed out it feels like we're stuck between people who've been not taught or expected or even have any, like, what Zoomers are going through is like a perfect way to make a dysfunctional regulation. There's real trauma and real shit that keeps happening to them and Gen Alpha. Absolutely real. But also, they were raised in conditions that assume they'd have relatively easy lives. And the social infrastructures around them, particularly for younger millennials too, was to isolate them and protect them. And those two that's like a way to build like narcissists, because there's two things going on there. You have no incentive to invest in the future or believe in community, but it's not bad enough to force you into the community to survive. Like, and I imagine psychologically that's pretty fucked. But yeah, in a materialist way, you know, I mean, I come down hard on Mark Fisher for a variety of reasons. But he's like, oh, they're denying us the future. And my point is like, no, we're not just denying it to us. We're also refusing to make it. And the question that I'm like is like, let's quit talking about paraphrasing B-Flow and start talking about why we're refusing to make it. Like, what is it about right now? If you want to become an influencer, you get into politics, but it's not really politics. Like, you and I are both lefties, but you and I don't think that what we do is actually political, right? Like, I hope you don't, but I don't think
not at all.
Right. I would also not say I'm not a political person. Like, I would not say, oh, this is not a political podcast. That would be ridiculous. But a political podcast is not the same as doing politics. It's not the same as doing union activism. It's not the same as organizing.
There's like a handful of instances where people have told me that something I made changed their mind or made them think about something differently. And I certainly count that as a win, but that does not, that's not base building necessarily. That's not like, it's not actual politics really.
Right. I've seen a lot of people tell me that, like, oh, you know, the parasocial is the future, the social is dead. And I'm like, okay, you do realize though that parasocial means that I have no response. There's no obligation from the media end of the parasocial relationship to you. Definitionally, that's what it means. It doesn't mean mediated. It means like, you know who I am. I have no idea who the fuck you are. And
yeah, and like I kind of had a little after Trump won, I kind of had a little like video that I put out where I was trying to just speak from my heart and not intellectualize what was happening, because that is my tendency. But I was just trying to make it clear that, look, if you did support Trump, or if you're a young person who supported Trump specifically, start thinking about who actually has your back, not like in terms of like what political figures you admire or what influencers you admire. Start thinking about who would have your back if things actually went seriously wrong in your life. And we don't even really need to get into politics because, you know, I know I'm not really going to say anything that would necessarily convince them otherwise. Just start thinking about like who would help you out if things went south, if things actually went south on like a societal level.
yeah.
And how many kids do you think come up short when they think about that?
Most of them. I will admit I've like had like my reaction at millennial smug liberals and stuff lately too, because for example, I was listening to some liberal podcast. I won't say what it was. It was a movie podcast though, and it was not. And they were talking about like how reactionary it is to talk about the male loneliness crisis, and I'm like, it's very fucking real. It's absolutely fucking real.
For sure.
There's no denying the statistics on it. Now, I will admit, some of these alienated young men, I don't want to hang around either.
Like, not at all. I mean, we just saw this fucker that shot up the church in Minneapolis.
Right. Oh God,
disgusting.
You know, I would also love a year. I mean, I do think liberals sometimes overfocus on mass shootings, but I'd love a year where I didn't have one about every 2 months.
Yeah.
That was random. Anyway, make mass shootings gang violence again. Because at least that's comprehensible. But yeah, it's pretty bleak. I have a lot of sympathy for young people. I know I bitch a lot about them. People's like, oh, Varn, you're becoming a boomer. And I'm like, well, I can't become a boomer. I'm a Gen Xer. Definitionally can't become a boomer. But also, okay, I actually think that, like, I don't know how people were, like, when I talk about, like, I even think the liberal part of Gen Z, or the left-wing part of Gen Z, is kind of reactionary, to be completely honest. But people don't know what I mean by reactionary. I am not saying that they are politically far right. What I'm saying a lot of the times is like, their politics is designed by totally negative interaction, which is easy to mobilize people around, but that is just reacting. And the people, you know, Demestra, the people who come up with what reactionary is, they knew that. They designed their politics to feed into that, and also to bait the other side into doing it in a way that reinforced the persecution complexes. And so, like a lot of I will say a lot of left wingers are reactionary. And people are like, well, what does that mean? And I'm like, well, I don't mean that they necessarily have. Although morally, I do think some of them are like busybodies, but
Yeah.
I'm not really saying they're reactionary, but it's been very hard to like even follow the trends. Like you think about the talking points. You follow like you and I both follow internet culture and movie culture enough to follow this, but like dating talking points. Even 5 years ago, dating, so like people would make a big deal out of like, oh, someone's dating someone 7 years older than them. And now it's spoken of positively by some of the same people in the millennial and Zoomer generations that Zoomer women are dating millennial men. And I find that fascinating. Because on one hand, it does make it like nobody believes what they're saying. Like they're all in a 5-minute hate all the time. So they don't really believe what they're saying. Not because they're being cynical, because they haven't thought about it. Right. Like, and that's I think that is why it's hard to make big art projects. The cost is both super low and super high. And it requires sociality and social trust. Like, you have to trust the people you're making stuff with. It is very hard to be a completely independent creator. I say this as a one-man podcasting show. I can't do this by myself.
Yeah.
And I have to have guests. I have to have interactions. I need and I'm just, I edit it. You guys can probably tell. I edit it. I put the art together myself. I run all the feeds myself. I do my own social media. You can definitely tell that because my aphasia kicks in and that's weird. But I can't do even at that level, even as a sole proprietor producer completely alone, I can't do this without sociality. There's no way to do it. And so I think that's what's happening. But that terrifies me. Like as a
yeah, I mean, if people are saying if the claim is true, if there is no more social and there is only the parasocial, that means we're like entering like an Armageddon like scenario. That's not like the implications of that are it's basically doomsday. You need other people in your life. Right.
Well, I mean, when liberals always go, oh, we will overcome it, or like, oh, people will go on, everyday life goes on. Someone said this to me the other day when I was complaining about liberals saying that nothing ever happens, or not liberals, leftists. Liberals sometimes say that too, but leftists for sure say it. And I was like, stuff is happening all the time. It's just not the end of capitalism. But if you think capitalism is steady state, you're an idiot. And the other thing I would say is like, when people say, oh, people just go about their everyday life. And I'm like, I can give you the Joseph Tainter book about the collapse of complex civilizations. No, they don't. Like, there have been civilizations where there's a breaking point and people just like, their way of everyday life goes, they go and hide out in the woods and they let their civilization completely fall apart. That happens. Like, it is not a weird thing to imagine just because you can't imagine it. I don't imagine it. Anyone can imagine it till it's happening.
I mean, there's no comprehensible version of that in the modern day because we have nuclear bombs. If civilization collapses, that means something of that scale is going to happen.
Well, I mean, if civilization collapses, even if you don't have a war that involves nuclear bombs, which I think people forget how dangerous those fucking things are these days. But the one thing I will say is, who's going to maintain Yucca Mountain? Like, because that's a big deal. I used to say that the primitivists, like, if everyone did what you wanted, you'd still all die.
Or just like the proliferation of the amount of guns in the United States. If we had some kind of collapse scenario, it wouldn't be like prior civilizational collapses.
But here's the thing. I don't think we know how violent prior civilization collapses were. The only thing we know is people do survive them, but we don't. Yeah. Like some of them, we do know how much of a bloodbath they are, but others were just like, these people seem to have just left, and there seemed to have been a lot of death, and then they forgot how to make stuff. And then, like, some people came back.
They weren't. It got to the point where they just weren't keeping records of it anymore, and yeah.
And like the population dropped so small that it's even hard to find archaeological records enough for them. Like, we do know people survived. The genetics are still there somewhere. Like, you can show up. They didn't completely die out, but like, not that many. And I'm not saying that's going to happen here in the U.S. The other thing I've said to people is like, dude, the Western Roman Empire didn't know that the Western Roman Empire had fallen for 300 fucking years. And I know we live in a much more accelerated timeline, but I could totally believe that the United States, we look at the breaking point of the United States, if it does break apart, we might like pinpoint it like in 2001, right? Like
or the housing and loans crisis, or something.
Yeah, or something like that. Like it, or maybe even, I might even say maybe the 70s. Like, so it's just, it's hard to say, you know, when the framework falls apart. But the framework's like, now we see the framework fraying, but it could fray for a long time. Like the kind of legal moves we see Trump and the states doing now, like, it's like the states may be legally mostly apart before anything ever happens. Like, you know, states might be semi-sovereign by before you see any like and it may not even be a civil war. It might just be like, we don't really function anymore. Let's just stop. I mean,
or some states do better than others, you know,
right,
due to natural resources in that area.
Right.
Here in Illinois, I feel like fairly secure. We got Lake Michigan over here. I feel like we had the effects of climate change are obvious, but we are poised to handle it better than a lot of areas.
You know, where I live in Utah, yeah, we've talked about that.
Yeah, you need to make your exit plan.
Yeah, no, I already have one. But it's I mean, a lot of the West is screwed. California is interesting because it's kind of screwed and kind of big enough that it might be able to handle it. But like, the fact that there's stuff that I used to say was very low, but you could contemplate it, and like more and more that's non-zero now. And it's like jokes that you hear former neoconservatives making that sound like me 5 to 10 years ago. I mean, it has been weird.
Kind of black-pilled.
Yeah. Well, it's also been weird that like even like people who I would call normie progressives, outside of people that we would talk about like on Chorus, but like even people on the Bulwark, which is a former neoconservative joint, will make statements that sound as radical as shit as I was saying in 2009, 2010, 2011, and that fucks with me because I'm like, oh yeah, like what the fuck is happening? like
people in my family who were previously just sort of like mainstream liberals who might sort of lean, you know, left liberal, solid union support, that type of thing, are now saying like, these politicians, no one is going to listen until there is mass violence. No one is going to listen to us until there are 1,000 Luigi Mangionis. And it's like, okay, my like mainstream liberal family member is now
Narodnicki,
some kind of insurrectionist, anarchist.
Right.
At least in, you know, that they'll utter things along those lines. They certainly don't.
Here's what I will say. That's late Russian Empire shit.
Yeah,
like that. You know. I call it Narodnicki specifically. I mean, as a Marxist, I'm always like, we reject Narodnicki tactics, even if we understand why they happen, blah, blah, blah. But like, I am like, yeah, you guys are predicting. On one hand, these guys are predicting mass civil war. I was trying to say this on another podcast. On another hand, you're talking to people with no experience. America is a violent place, but yet most people do not actually see a lot of the violence directly or deal with its aftermath. So the people talking about this, I'm like, you've never had to clean blood off your shoes. Like, I don't think this is going to go the way you think it does. And I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying that, like, if you should be more horrified by what
you
you're
shouldn't say it
saying
so
than you are,
flippantly.
right? Like, you know, I'm like, in a civil war, you're looking at between 2 and 10% of the population dying, no matter who wins.
That's kind of like best case.
Yeah, it is. You know, I know the American Civil War was one of the bloodiest wars in American history, and yet as a civil war, it wasn't that bloody. It was like 2%. It's probably more. They're probably underestimating, maybe 3%. I'm not overestimating. I'm just thinking what the stats I got that from. I was reading a book. It was like 2%. But like most civil wars are like 5 to 10 to 15% of the population is dead at the end of it. And they go on for a long time. They are much more violent and brutal than normal wars because no one can retreat. People will bring up like occupational wars for that. But I'm like, in an occupation, the reason why the insurgents have an easy time actually messing with the occupiers is there's a lot of incentive once your death toll goes up, that even if you're dying at 5 to 1, you're making it hard enough for the people who are staying there to want to stay there, and they can just go home. When there is no other home to go to, it becomes zero sum, and whoever kills the most people wins. And it's that simple.
It's a fight to the death.
Right. And you know, and then you hope you can incorporate the survivors in, or you're going to be back in a civil war relatively soon. Like,
so I definitely like this train of thought is something I think about, but I also like going back to what you were talking about with like the nothing ever happens type crowd. I constantly am second guessing myself when I see red flags now, because there have been so many instances where what I thought was a red flag was just something that kind of petered out and didn't lead to anything. I think so. Like a couple of things are happening, right? When you hear these people who say nothing ever happens. Number one, Trump was elected in 2016 and nothing substantially changed. Or at least that's like the sort of experiential, that's what they experience from their standpoint, that nothing has really substantially changed in their life. And so, you know, to your average kind of left liberal or lefty adjacent person, when Trump was elected, it was framed as a sort of the rise of fascism, right? And that just kind of petered out.
right. But then it didn't peter out. I mean, I was one of the people saying you aren't really fighting fascism at the time. And I want to be clear on that. But I was also thinking, like, what do you do when you've blown your wad on this and like actual authoritarianism or something fascistic? I'm not going to say fascist because I just don't like that debate. People go, words have meaning. I'm like, actually, they have to be socially agreed upon, and we no longer agree upon the social meaning of fascism.
Yeah, I'm not like a prescriptivist,
right?
Or that like we need to assert that fascism means a particular thing. But you know, like historically, how it was used, to me, indicates like, oh, if we're entering full blown fascism, that means the country is committing suicide.
Right. Because also historically, that's what happened in all those countries. Like, it's like
that's what happened to all the fascist countries.
Yeah, like they either civil warred themselves to death, or they got taken over by somebody else and reestablished. Like, which, by the way, resistance didn't work in any of those cases either.
No,
like
it didn't.
I was telling someone about that, and they're like, "Oh, we should be like the Right Rose Society," and I was like, "So dead?"
Yeah, so we should get ourselves killed.
Yeah,
there's also the obvious fact that if I was talking like this in Nazi Germany, I would be killed.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes,
I mean that's the thing that is kind of my sticking point, where it's like, yeah, we have sort of this like hyper real theatrical fascistic administration. No, I'm certainly not denying that, and the people affected by it, it's like incomprehensible to me what they're going through.
I think it actually cleans up historical liberalism though, because like I was telling someone who was complaining, like no one's doing what America does in extraditing people to third countries. So I'm like, the British did it all the fucking time during their like they were still doing it up to the 1980s. Like
exile has been a form of punishment for
forever.
Like,
and exiling people to a place that they don't belong, also not new. I'm not saying what happened with Trump isn't new. What makes it new is the combination of things being thrown at the wall at once, and we don't know what sticks and what doesn't.
Right.
But I also was surprised that the mainstream media, in so much that it does anything, has capitulated. I was watching an MSN stream, and they're like, Trump has his highest poll yet ever, and you read it, it's like he only had 55% negatives, and I was like, oh my fucking god. So you guys like who cynically led all this resistance shit like last time are now like kowtowing this time because you know that there actually are stakes, but no one believes you anyway, because the polls, like I've been following polls now, and like people have said, oh, the polls don't work. I'm like, the polls don't do it. The polls never did what you thought they would do. Like they're never 100% predictive. There's like in a 50-50 race, there's a pretty close chance on either candidate winning, even if one has a advantage. Like that's just, you just don't really understand math. You're using polls wrong. But lately, the polls vary such an insane amount. I mean, none of them have Trump in the positive, but like is he down to a 35% approval rate or a 45% approval rate? In the same week, we'll get two polls that have a 10% difference. That's not in a margin of error. Like,
yeah, that's a pretty substantial difference.
Yeah, that's huge. And so you're just like, no one knows anything anymore. Like, either the polls are cooked because the sample sizes are cooked, or they're, the media has totally broken down. And to bring it back to where we started, we know that there's dark money in all this media.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, do we actually even know the number of people being deported right now? The Trump administration has an incentive to exaggerate it.
Right. We don't know.
Whereas like a Nazi administration, like they would try to hide it.
Right. It's a bizarre place to be. And I said to someone once, I was like, I was being an edgelord, I admit it. It was like, you always talking to me about fascism as if it's the worst thing in the world. What is what's happening now ends up being worse than fascism? And like they couldn't even comprehend it. And I'm like, but I'm just be honest with you, secret police, other societies have had that. Even liberal societies have had that. Breakdown of the rule of law. It's actually been weird that the English-speaking world doesn't have that more. Like, that has happened almost everywhere else. And, and if you think things are going to get better, if you like Democrats, I want you to go look at what's happening to the UK right now under this current Labour administration. They're That's all but cool. Banning fucking Wikipedia. Like, and they're turning their economy into something akin to Argentina's 10 years ago. So
the UK is so cooked. Right. It's unbelievable.
I mean, and
I saw a figure that said that Poland, the GDP of Poland is going to exceed the UK in like, I forget what year exactly, but it was astonishing to me.
I think the GDP of Ireland does, or at least it's very close to it. They're also on average taller and healthier now. It's like this is bad. I don't, as much as I talk about how I hate the English, I don't actually like that. But
I don't want to see them suffer. They're my brethren. My ancestors are from England and Ireland.
I forgive you. At least you got some from Ireland. But No, it's also just wild to see all this go down. I mean, and what I've also been kind of amazed at is they're not just bad here. This is the other thing that people miss. Like the affordability crisis is pretty much worldwide, with the exception of maybe Vietnam and China for obvious reasons. But like, it's pretty much worldwide. Everybody's economy, including China's, has slowed more than they wanted. China's has kicked it up a little bit because the U.S. has basically given them a big back gift in the way we've implemented the dumbest tariff policy known to man. I'm not saying that I was arguing with my friend Ben Burgess because I'm like, there are some tariffs that are defending, but you guys on the left think tariffs is a way to manage things because you think strong state building works. And I'm like, it doesn't work in a developed economy. It's just like FDR actually ratcheted down the tariffs by doing matching tariffs to ratchet them down, not up. Just want to point that out to you. Like, your understanding of NAFTA as being mostly about tariffs is wrong. It's actually mostly about other parts of labor law that applied across the board and hurt everybody because it made them subject to trade rules, like the IMS rules that could crack down on anybody's labor law. That wasn't just about tariffs. It wasn't even primarily about tariffs because de-tariffization had already been going on for about 50 years at that point. So it's like, I mean, and people are like, oh, how dare you talk about labor leaders? I'm like, they're just wrong. They're just factually wrong. They're not wrong about what they experienced. I mean, Sean Fain's right that after NAFTA, things got a lot worse for American workers. But like, he's not a lawyer. He doesn't necessarily know why. Like, and I think that's across the board.
I mean, to your point about like, we do need to think about the continuity between presidents, when it comes to Biden and Trump. Like, Biden kind of teed up Trump with the CHIPS Act to purchase 10% of Intel. It's a very interesting development. That would have been unthinkable.
When Trump was threatening to nationalize the defense industry, I was like, oh my God, that's actually a good idea. I mean, I'm not like,
final merger thesis. Let's fucking go.
Yeah, I'm like, it should have never been off the, that's one of, you know, as long as there's nation states, that should have been non-nationalized anyway.
Yeah, that seems like common sense.
It's just, so, you know, I don't want to undermine the horror of right now. And I mean, I do think what we're seeing is like Vance has an ideology, Miller has an ideology, RFK has an ideology. They're not the same ideology. Trump is a late 19th century American grifter who also is probably your racist granddad.
His ideology is
revenge. It's like, it's revenge, but he also doesn't want to be hated like a true strongman, which is why when I was listening to the like Trumpist, like national conservatives types going like, he's going to be a lion. I'm like, that's a fucking fox, if not a coyote. Liberals have underestimated his intelligence, but like a strongman, he is not. Like, or coherent, like he is not.
You know, I mean, there's intelligence, and then there's just the preternatural ability to say whatever is going to like just have no relationship to anything in reality.
Right.
Is that intelligence? I don't know what that is.
But you just got to get for it. But I mean, it's funny though, because I was one of these people who even I was like, I thought that like, okay, Trump 2 is going to be a lot like Trump 1. We're going to have it like people like my friend Benjamin Studebaker and my friend Danny Besner would be like, you know, he's going to listen to Ivanka and stuff. I'm like, no, none of that stuff happened now. It's not the same groups that support him. It's not the same aesthetics. It's actually a very different thing. And yet I'm like, okay, so let's say the Democrats win and this isn't the end of democracy and that all feels like hyperbole, which is, by the way, is going to really hurt them if it really is hyperbole, if things do go back to normal after this, whatever normal is, because it won't be normal. what's going to happen is they're going to do this immigration regime with a human face and more guest worker programs and stuff like that, but there will not be a clear path to citizenship for people. We're probably not going to get massive healthcare reform. They may, like during the Biden administration, this is something I was pointing out to people. People talk about the cuts in healthcare. I'm like, Biden had been quietly ratcheting down Medicaid payments from like 2021 forward. Like, and now I've also seen a lot of these people, some of whom are implicated in the chorus controversy. We're trying to do, it isn't the same that what Trump is doing. The Biden. I'm like, no, it wasn't the same, but you're trying to now argue that the Obama Biden immigrant deportation regime was humane because it followed rule of law. And a lot of you were like, abolish ICE just 6 years ago.
Right.
I just don't know who would trust you? Like,
well, anyone paying attention, you've lost all credibility.
But maybe that's what we're dealing with, is like we would talk about the people don't have the social interaction enough to maintain the memory to have the ability to adjudicate these things. Some people do. I mean, I don't want to overstate how fucked like psychologically Gen Z is. I think sometimes we can sound like apocalyptic here. But I can't tell anymore. That's where I'm at. And I teach kids. Like I interact with kids every day. Like, yeah. So it's just a different world to me. And I don't have an answer for where we're at. I also think, when the people are like nothing ever happens, well, they're expecting like the decline of the empire to be like the Soviet Union. It'll just happen overnight and everything falls apart. That historically is not that common. It does happen, but it's not that common.
That's what leftist commentators were saying was going to happen.
Right.
So they've just become jaded.
They've jaded themselves. I mean, the other thing, leftist commentators have been saying the dollar was going to completely collapse overnight for like 5 years during the Biden administration and the end of the Trump administration. It never happened. But the dollar has been devaluing for a long time, for 20 years.
Yeah, and if this whole issue with Trump firing one of the Fed members, that is where I think the rubber meets the road as far as like things can go south.
It's going to be interesting because on one hand, like we stand at a precipice where depending on what happens with the chips and the tariffs, and if whether or not the AI bubble can. And by the way, guys, even if AI is useful, it's bubbling. It is not the reason why it's bubbling is that for the AI model to work, you can't just have the Magnificent Seven being the only people making money from it. I'm not talking about individuals, but other companies have to increase their profit margins after doing the layoffs for it to be profitable for them in the long run, for the Magnificent Seven to continue its stock valuation, because they have to sell to other businesses. That's their real prime market, not you dipshit. So when you think about that and you look at the profitability of these new companies adopting AI stuff, it has not gone up since they adopted the AI. So
yeah, I mean, this was always, we talked a lot about AI in our last interview. And I do think that people have sort of been, on one hand, of course, you're right, there is a bubble. And a lot of people are echoing that sentiment that there's a difference between use value and exchange value, right? And so the expectations that have been sort of baked into this because of the hype are surely have to reach a breaking point at some point pretty soon, I think. On the other hand, we have like leftists saying this as though the technology is not useful because there is a bubble.
Yeah, which is wrong. It's just wrong.
That's not, those two things are completely different, if you're evaluating everything by how profitable it is, it is. You really are one of those capitalist realist type people that Mark Fisher complains about.
No, I would agree with you, because I have been skeptical on LLM AIs. I'm still skeptical, and with my brother, who's an AI doomer but works in the field, it's like AGI is going to be soon. I'm like, I'm not even sure AGI is possible, and you haven't convinced me that it is, because LLMs have no way that I can see that they would become AGIs, but they are incredibly effective at certain things. Are they as effective as people at their energy cost? Probably not. But you actually could do something about that with a different incentive set. Like, I mean,
yeah,
China's already proven that you could. Like, so.
And there is an argument to be made. Like, you know, that's not something that I would ever minimize, is the energy expenditure and the water and
I think the water is probably bigger than people have made arguments that we can get that the AI could eventually get gains on efficiency that made the energy expenditure go down better to other components, but no one's made an argument with that for the water usage. It's just like there's and it's,
I mean, I do think there is a possibility that it will actually incentivize more infrastructure being built in terms of, you know,
I thought so too until the big beautiful bill gutted most of that. That's what I was shocked. That's when I was like, they truly, like, the GOP truly doesn't believe there's a future even for them, because they're gutting infrastructure projects that they know they're going to need for their economy to work.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Like, well, and I mean, if you look at what they've done in Nevada and particularly in Florida to their own tourism industry, like, Florida's not going to have an economy in a couple of years. Like, because it's too expensive for domestic consumption, and they have disincentivized almost all foreign consumption. I was looking at like, I actually didn't realize how much of the Florida economy was dependent on Canadian and European snowbirds. Like, it's a remarkable amount. I also didn't realize how much Kentucky was the largest exporter economy in the country, and we've heard it. Like,
I did not know that.
Yep. Because it deals in stuff like bourbon and like rare exports. Which now makes sense why Ron Paul and Mitch McConnell hated the tariff regime so much, and they're so open about it, right? Rand Paul, not Ron Paul, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
But the agricultural economy of Nebraska has tanked. Texas is seeing real fractures, and the blue economy is like, oh, we can go out on our own. I'm like, but guys, and I've been saying this for a decade, maybe you can, but your entire business model was based off the parity value of the dollar and being able to use that for cultural export exchange. I don't know that continues indefinitely into the future.
Yep.
And this whole giver states and taker states thing that they've been bringing up since the aughts, it's just like weird. It's a weird framing. It's just like, one, you know, a lot of the reasons why stuff is taken is because prisons and military complexes are put in the southern states. And yes, it does. I guess that it contributes to their economy, maybe. But two, you're all dependent, you guys in particular, in like financial sectors and shit. Have you seen what happened to Britain when they made that all more difficult, when they destroyed their financial sector? Like, I just, you know, you think you're special? And, you know, apparently they do. So it's just, I'm not saying they couldn't. I mean, like, California is the size of a country, as is Texas, blah, blah, blah. But it's, California's economic policies, when you look at them, don't really look that great, particularly when you look at like their homelessness rates. Basically, their middle class barely exists anymore. Most of it is left, and now I'm seeing liberals like say this like it's a good thing, and I'm just confused. But maybe they were all being paid by chorus. I don't know, like, because they all signed fucking NDAs, so we don't. Like, because I have just seen the talking points go nuts. I mean, I will admit, on the independence of the Fed, I've been worried about it because I remember what happened to Liz Truss, and for different reasons. If you piss off the bond market, stuff happens.
Yeah.
On the other side of things, though, I've been kind of confused at like a lot of some people who I used to associate with being MNT become Fed warriors, because I'm like, but you guys fundamentally don't believe in the independence of the Fed. Like,
yeah, isn't that the whole issue?
yeah, like isn't Trump doing what you want just for evil or whatever? Like,
they just don't trust him to do the right thing.
Right.
And I think more importantly, the markets wouldn't trust him to do the right thing.
Some MMTers, not all, but some MMTers don't have an international view of how market works. They basically talk about economies as if they're autarkies, which is nutty.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, no, the international bond markets, I mean, it's mostly owned by domestic people, but it's actually a way to why it exists is both A, it's a form of capitalist power. Okay, true. But B, it is also a way to stabilize the currency when there's no jointly held commodity that everyone agrees upon, to solidify currency up for international trade, so people feel like they can trust each other. The bond market is a check on that. And I think a lot of people just don't get that when they're looking at this. And to tie it back into culture, and I don't want to keep all your night, so we'll be the last thing. I think the cultural malaise we talked about in the beginning of the show or in the middle of the show is directly tied to this. I mean, people talk about like economic declines leading to good art, and I guess that was kind of true in the 70s, but like historically, is that true?
That's
Not
a good question.
really. Like the Renaissance wasn't happening when like the Italian city-states had a shit economy.
No, and I've always been the type of leftist that, a type of socialist that thinks if you meet people's basic needs, if you're able to accomplish that, there will be a proliferation of art.
Yeah.
You need to have a stable base.
Well, that's one of the things maybe we're seeing that's the difference between the 70s and now is, while the 70s was an economically disastrous time and it was culturally kind of a malaise time, but it led to a lot of interesting art and cinema, etc. Maybe part of the reason it did that is there was still a welfare state for people to be able to try to hone these skills when they didn't have enough work to do otherwise. And that's just not been the case since the 1990s.
There's also this, part of the issue is there is just a massive proliferation of art.
There's tons of it right now.
Like more music is made in a day. I don't know the exact factoid, but more music is made in a day than was made in a very long amount of time. If you're talking about like the 80s,
Right.
And so, like if you're following the logic of the market, then it becomes devalued because there's so much of it. And then that kind of disincentivizes disincentivizes capitalists from investing in it for sure. So yeah, I don't know where we're at. It's kind of a crazy moment. It's hard to say. I'm also like experientially, like it's hard for me to clock a lot of this stuff because of my health issues. I've had these, we alluded to it earlier, but like I've had 4 semi-major surgeries in the past 2 years. But also I'm strangely at a point in my life where I'm more financially stable than I ever was previously.
I was until about 6 months ago. My partner got hit, and not actually from Doge, but like downstream of that.
Oh, really?
All the grants drying up in the university meant that they had to tighten up, and then some areas that she worked in were mismanaged. So she's not without a job. Actually, she still has. She's like at 49% or whatever. But like it's like half her income's gone, and cost of living has gone up. My brother, who is fairly stable, told me that his bills. He's in Georgia, where things go up faster than in Utah. Weirdly, Utah's utilities and stuff, we get hit hard by water. Like my water utility is insanely expensive, but it also makes sense. I live in a goddamn desert.
Right.
But my brother told me that his bills between student loans going up and everything else, his bills went up $2,100 a month in the past 6 months. I mean, in the past year. And he's like, I hated Biden and now I hate Trump too. And, you know, he was kind of like one of those, he's not a business owner, but he was what I like to call like the business center Republicans. And now I think he's going to probably be like some kind of weird, never Trump former Republican Dem or something. Although it's like, well, it doesn't matter anymore. You're not gonna be dealing with this guy forever. Like, he's 80. If today is anything, I mean, even if he gets through his presidency natural lifespan, although he's already like 4 years past the average American, but he's rich, so he probably will.
Sure.
He's just not going to be like him and Biden. Like, they're not going to be alive long enough to be a growing concern for you for completely natural reasons for that much longer. Like, you know, but this other stuff will still be with us. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, and I'm with you on it's got to be a paradox that would have your health fall apart. And for me, that would happen to me in Mexico. I was fiscally the best I'd ever been, and I was almost dying all the time.
Yeah.
And become very paranoid. And like, I recluse from the world for a year. I stopped doing, like I told you off air, man, I stopped doing podcasts for about a year. I still was releasing podcasts because I recorded, because I am a workaholic, and when I was making them, I recorded like 2 years worth in a series of 5 months.
That's very you.
And had no means to release them, so I had to sit on them. And that luckily back then I wasn't talking about immediate stuff. It was all theory. So I kept the podcast going, but I wasn't doing anything. Like, I wasn't advertising them or anything. And also podcasting back then wasn't a job for me. It was a weird obsessive hobby. You know, I think people forget this. It was very hard to monetize. People tried, but it was very hard to monetize a podcast, even for the first 5 years of Patreon existing. Like, it took a while to catch on. Like, people just thought podcasts were free.
Yeah. There's also this weird phenomenon, though, where if you kind of got in on the ground floor, you could have potentially been wildly successful.
Yeah, if I had been producing from 2014 to 2017, as opposed to starting back in 2016 under someone else's aegis behind a paywall, yes, I probably could have gone gangbusters. Because when I came back at the end of COVID as a separate, it took a while off after I left Zero, right? But I came back at the end of COVID as like an independent entity. This went gangbusters for me very quickly. I was like, oh my gosh, I can actually make. I beat what I got paid doing podcasts for another company by myself within 4 months. Like, it was not even hard. And that was at the tail end of the decline of things. So I was like, God damn it. Like,
yeah,
I timed this wrong. I've been in this since 2011. I should have been able to ride these coattails better, but you know, whatever. It's okay. We all make mistakes. I also think, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, you know, going back to what we were talking, because it does bother me, like, just the sort of weird confluence of events in my life have led to a point where I'm like, my experience is clearly not the typical experience of most Americans right now. If what I'm reading online is even remotely any indication. So I find myself just like constantly second guessing my general,
Me too.
second guessing my heuristics, second guessing my reactions to things, and wondering whether any particular thing is newsworthy or even worth talking about or thinking about from a practical standpoint. It's tough. It's a tough place to be in, but also it's like it's also optimal. Like I said, I'm the most financially stable I've ever been in my life. Like, we were able to buy a house. It's not.
Yeah, you just made like half the audience of the planet hate you.
I know. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was built in 1909. It's a fixer upper, but we were able to buy a house.
Yeah.
And
you're in a state that isn't quite in. I mean, all states are insane, but you're not like in Utah where houses went from $100,000 to $600,000 in a year.
It was a little crazy during the pandemic when we were looking for a house, for sure. Like, there were cars lined up around the block sometimes to go to a showing.
Mm-hmm.
And what ended up happening is we just waited a couple years, and then we were able to find something. So I don't know. I'm like, go ahead.
No, I feel you. I was about to say, like, I bought a house when I came back to the States because I'd saved up money abroad and supported someone through cancer because I was teaching mercenaries. The only time I was ever like rolling in dough in my life. But I gave up the house. Actually, I say I lost it. I actually willingly gave it up because we didn't have enough equity for me to enforce the sale. I think we both make $2,000. If I had not done that, and this is not my ex's fault, so don't take this as bitter grapes on her. This is me being bitter grapes about COVID. And we actually had sold it. We both would have made $100K. Like it was sort of like, ouch, that's more money than I've ever had in my hand at one time in my life. So, but whatever, bad decision making, right? But you couldn't have known that either because like I was making the projections based off of prior home growth, and I thought like 6% a year or 6 to 10% a year is pretty good. That way outpaces inflation. I wasn't expecting 50 to 100% doubling a year for 3 years. Things have stabilized out here. Now they're turning everything into apartments that no one's buying. And because of the tax incentives, I've tried to explain this. Like, why YIMBYism doesn't work is if you lose money as a property holder, you have no incentive to raise the rent, but you have every incentive not to drop it because you can write off the full cost of the rent on your taxes as a business loss. Why the hell would you ever drop so and like people like don't get that. I'm like, no, you could build as much as you want. There's a tax incentive, particularly with these very large investment banks and private equity buying this, to just take the loss and use it as a tax write-off. Like, it will stop prices from going up as fast, but that's that's not here nor there, and I just think people don't understand that. But I guess I would feel you in the sense that like as hard as things are economically for me and my wife, I do know we're still in the top 20% income earners for the United States. And like, that doesn't mean we can eat out. That doesn't mean like I struggle. Like this surgery is like dangerously close to bankrupting me. It's not going to, but it's close. Right. And I'm like, if I'm like that, what the fuck is the average? Like, because I can't replicate my parents' lifestyle, who was, according to official socioeconomic, data, 2 social classes below me. Like,
yeah. And that's the thing that's kind of giving me an existential crisis is I've kind of, at the very least, reached where my parents were at economically. Which, like, there's in the back of my head, I'm like, well, then there's nowhere to go but down.
Well, you could steady state, but
I hope so. I mean, there's a lot of things going on right now that that kind of alienate me from other people. And so then I end up being sympathetic to what's going on, but also like, if I'm ever doing political commentary, I don't want to impress upon people that I actually know what I'm talking about. It's a tough place to be in. We're also like, we have a side hustle where we use LLMs to make money. That sounds like I'm a grifter now that I said that. But it's like a pretty substantial chunk of money, and I couldn't replicate that for another person. I couldn't teach another person to do that. It's kind of a unique situation because we just knew some people and had an opportunity. But when I hear this, when I hear a lot of the AI doomers, I certainly see a lot of the points that they're making. But then I'm also like, I don't know how many people there are like me out there who are using it to make money and just kind of printing money right now. Like,
I can tell you where I can legally do it. I use it to generate compliance paperwork, which has made it where I can focus a lot more on teaching.
That's certainly a good thing.
Like I really have and there's so much more communication with parents because I can write a paragraph and then throw it in there. And I'm like, make this, clean this up for a parent, do this, personalize it, send it out.
That's what it's good at, synthesizing information.
And I'm not, by the way, yes, it's made it where they're hiring less teachers, but we're not replacing teachers with them, despite what people say. We can't. And they're not. If they thought they could, they try. And there's one charter school that's trying, but most of the schools are like, no, we really can't do that. But I've also heard a lot of professors who total no AI ever, and I'm like, I don't want the kids using it to write. I really agree with you. I've seen what it does cognitively, but with you guys giving the cognitive studies, that same study also says if you use it as a proxy for a social outlet, and you realize that it's blowing smoke up your ass, they don't say it that way, but they imply it. You can use it to hone a bunch of skills actually, and not lose the cognitive drive. But if you use it to just generate everything, you're going to become a potato. But it's
right.
weird because when we talk about complex technologies, people tend to not look at them like we would look at simple technologies. And weirdly, they tend to see simple technologies as more nuanced than complex technologies. I'll give you an example. Knives can hurt people. No one's going to argue that we should, except in the UK, that we should get rid of all knives. That knives it's a very simple technology, blah, blah, blah. But we use them all the time. They do have pernicious social effects, but they also have a lot of good effects. There's probably environmental. I mean, I know there's environmental costs in knives, and probably not as much as other things, but getting any kind of metal is going to be an environmentally hazardous scenario. I'm not saying it's the same as AI. I'm just saying the logic patterns are weird to me, because I'm like, I am an AI skeptic in the sense when I hear people talk about AGI and stuff like that, I'm just like, that's not
for sure.
And I also thought when I first played with AI that it kind of sucked. But then I started training one because they wanted me to do it at my job. And I was like, and I work in ed tech. I'm a teacher, but I worked in ed tech specifically. And I started doing stuff with it. And I'm like, oh God, it really can do certain things. And it can at least make my manual ass paperwork be something that I just have to double check. I wouldn't use it to grade a student.
For sure.
But I might, but I might tell a student hey, have it look at your comma usage and not redo it for you, but ask it what you're doing wrong. I can tell you, but there's 25 of you and you can't all get to me at that time. So it's, and then there's been some interesting things in pedagogy that have come out of this. You might be interested in this. I'm now having kids show me all their drafts, so I know that they didn't generate it all at once, which is actually good practice anyway, but no one backed me up on it till AI came out, and the AI checkers started falsely accusing people, or maybe they aren't false, but we can't really say. They're not 100%. And so, in fact, I think I'm better at telling AI sometimes than the AI checker is. But I started just show me your drafts. Let's talk about your drafts. And if there's enough drafts, I'm like, okay, I can tell you used it some, but you just corrected your grammar. I don't really give a shit about that. I mean, people might be mad about that, but that really is analogous to being mad about someone using a calculator after they've learned the equations.
Or a spell checker.
Right. Right. And I do remember when teachers were mad about that in the 90s when I was a kid. But
you're not always going to have a calculator.
You're right. Which
Yeah, I
was
do.
true
It's my
until
phone.
this. But I mean, I do think it's part of why people don't understand math logic. But anyway, I mean, my point is, I guess I'm taking a centrist point. I mean, on this, as much as I hate that word, that this technology is bad because of the way it's being developed. But the idea that you're going to throw it away and say it would never do anything, that does feel like you're projecting so that you can reject this, as opposed to dealing with the fact this is a good technology being used, or at least not maybe a neutral technology being used to bad ends and bad ways that are environmentally destructive. But that's a use case issue, not
It is
a inherent teleology to the idea of large language models and neural networks.
a use case issue and an issue with our power grid.
Yeah.
And I mean, what comes to mind when we talk about this is that recent MIT study that said like 95% of businesses, I forget exactly how it was phrased, but like they are not getting a profit out of
Right.
LLMs as of yet. And I mean, the thing that comes to like the reasons for that are obvious to me.
I think it's power costs, isn't it? I mean, there's lots of reasons.
But in terms of implementation, like larger corporations are not going to have, it's not going to be a very efficient process trying to implement LLMs in a way that actually increases productivity. I think it's going to be much more beneficial for small businesses who can just tell their employees, hey, if it helps you, use it in whatever way. Just kind of do whatever you want as long as you get your job done. Larger corporations don't really work that way. Like they're more concerned about liability and all that. That's part of it. Another part of it is really, if we were looking at the profitability of this whole thing, you would replace the middle managers first.
Right.
And the middle managers aren't going to get rid of their own jobs. They're the ones implementing this technology.
Right.
So,
but they are that and like clerical work are the two obvious things you use with it. I mean, this is the thing. They tend to actually try to get rid of the things that are the people who it doesn't make sense to get rid of. I mean, it is a work efficiency gain, but again, we could use work efficiency gains. We have a declining population now, and you know, that's going to put a strain on social services. It's not the end of the world, though. I was reading that Jackman article, made it sound like we all need to have socialist baby making machines. I'm like, honestly, the world can't take that either. I'm not a Malthusian. I'm just saying, like, you do have to admit there are going to be limits to what you can get out of this planet. And
no, and you're right. A declining population forces you to be more efficient with the resources that you have, and it forces more automation, which is ultimately a good thing. Like, we don't want to be doing menial work our whole lives.
No, it's this is my issue with degrowthers, was not what people think it is. I'm not actually like we need to grow the economy forever, but the idea that like, oh, we move back to like some of them, not all of them, but some of them are basically proposing like we need to move back to like 40% of the population is doing relatively manual agriculture. And I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, it's not a smart. It would be incredibly land destructive, actually.
And how do you sell that? How do you sell that to people? So my knees are going to be fucked by the time I'm like 40.
And then like, oh, we also need to do it to undo the balances in the developing world. I'm like, no, we need to build infrastructure that'll last for 300 years in the developing world. Like, so it would be one, like, we are completely build things shittier and shittier, but partly so people have to buy them over and over again. And like I see it in everything around me, and then like I get something that was made in the 60s and it still fucking works. But I will also admit that it's simpler technology. Like, the more complicated a technology is, the more cascade failure points it's going to have.
For sure.
But anyway, I mean, my point in all this is just like, it just feels like people projecting very simple things where I'm like, no, we do need to use less. We absolutely do. And I don't think everyone can have bananas in the way that we have it now. That's such a dumb debate, but I mean, ultimately I do agree with it. But I'm like, we don't know what abundance would look like when you're not measuring it from GDP and you're not measuring it from constant expansion.
We need to theorize a concept of socialist growth to combat capitalist growth.
Right.
We need to articulate what it actually means to grow as a society in a functional way.
All right. And I think this is something we just need to deal with. And both the bright green, we can, because sometimes I'm like, you guys really are optimistic on technology. And then the degrowth, or what we used to call deep green. I'm like, you guys, some of your proposals aren't that radical, and I even agree with them, but the others are insane. Or you couldn't sell it to anybody, and you would need a mecha Stalin for the entire planet for this to happen. And that person would be shot by somebody. So I'm just, it's like, this is an unrealistic power fantasy. We need to quit using resources irresponsibly. We need to respect land and life more. Abso-fucking-lutely. But it's not going to look like trying to turn it back to the 17th century or whatever you guys think you're going to do. And I mean, it's not primitivism. I mean, some people call it it's not primitivism, but sometimes I'm like, this is still kind of nutty. I just want to tell you what the population would have to be to sustain what your vision, and it's going to involve, I think the population's gonna in the 21st century, I think worldwide population is going to start to decline, in a probably fairly responsible way if we don't have big fucking wars.
Right.
Although I'm not as hopeful about that, because we're now in pre-World War II level of conflicts worldwide, so it's a little bit worrisome.
It's not looking great.
But it's, if we pull that off, we could ratchet down human population without anyone having without stuff I don't know. One of the things I've talked about to someone else is people who are pro-natal. There's been no set of pro-natal policies, even socialist ones, that have worked. Once societies start getting into population decline, they tend to decline, hit a steady state, join another society, accept other people in, and then start growing again. But there's not been a whole lot of way to reverse it through just tinkering around. I haven't seen any study. I mean, even some of the pro-natalists will admit this. And I'm just so what are you doing? What do you think we can do? Because, I mean, the incentives they're giving in the United States for having kids is pathetic given the cost. A few, but with insurance, it's about 10 grand just to go through the birthing process. And then it's going to be probably about $500,000 in the course of your life to make sure a kid comes upright. And I
can say, like I said before, I'm the most financially stable I've ever been in my life. That would not be the case if we had kids. We consciously decided not to have kids because we know that it would be economically devastating for us, and it would drastically decrease our quality of life.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the trend you see with developing nations is quality of life increases, people have less kids.
Right. Because
I don't know.
Well, when quality of life is low, you have a lot of kids because kids are not necessarily going to survive.
And they're little workers.
And they're also little workers. And right. I mean, you have additional farm labor. You also, I mean, you do invest in them. I'm not saying it was just, but even in hunter-gatherer societies, the cost of benefits are pretty good on having kids. In our society, it isn't. It just isn't. Like, it's a cost, period. And so who has kids? People who don't have the means or education to stop from having kids are people who have the luxury to have a bunch of them. And they're usually rich. So it's, you know, it's at least a kind of weird society where like the rich and the very poor have certain weird shared behavioral trends that are not shared by most of the rest of the society. But yeah.
I did think a couple of years ago there was like a discourse online about how like making abortion illegal is kind of an effort with Republicans to get people to have more little workers. And there's
probably some truth to that, but it doesn't work. The Soviet Union tried to do that. It backfired terribly.
And like, there was a lot of pushback on that, and it was sort of like labeled like a vulgar Marxist type argument. But then I was like, well, isn't be fruitful and prosper kind of like an objectified survival of prior modes of production that just has carried over into our current, you know, like you can see the historical train of thought there. In times where population growth is an issue, you can easily see the ideology shifting towards like, oh, you know, we should make abortion illegal. We should this and that. I don't know. I thought that discourse was pretty interesting.
I thought it was vulgar in the sense that it conflated, because some people it's like, oh, this was always going to happen, and I'm like, no, I think you're right about why they're doing this. It's probably about productivity. It's why they're also trying to bring back child labor, and that's also not helping as much as they would want. The issue though is that it just won't work. It's not that they don't believe it. Like, I mean, like, look, it's like if the stats are right on younger millennials and Zoomers, not a lot of them are having a ton of sex anyway. So
they're like an asexual generation.
I mean,
that's one of the most mystifying things about this current moment.
And that's not just like the progressive, you know, gender fluid ones. It's also like hetero incels. I mean, and stuff like that. I don't know what you do about that. I mean, like, incel ideology baffles me. It doesn't baffle me. I know how people get to it. It's just like once people do get to it, it doesn't seem like you can stop it on a lot of the ways there, but once they're there, it's like, well, they're gone. There's like they have to decide to pull themselves back completely on their own. Otherwise, it's not happening. And I don't know, like, because it's such a resentment ideology, but it's one that like I see how you get there. Like when people like, oh, go to therapy. I'm like, therapy requires money. And I know therapy's gotten a lot cheaper, and that's why we use it a lot more. I mean, there's a reason why, you know, like I was reading a Mark Fisher piece about everyone being on psychological meds, and I'm like, I don't see that as much as people just everybody going to fucking therapy now. But therapy's a lot cheaper, even without insurance. I mean, it's still expensive. I mean, $150, $50 a week is expensive, but look at what therapy cost in the 90s. It's probably like $200 in 1990s money, which would mean it would be like $450 now. I might be wrong on the exact inflation calculations. That's like a ballpark roughly put out of my ass based on 3% a year, except for the years that fuck with that, and that's why I'm. But anyway, but if you think about the difference in price, I was talking to someone like, oh, clothes, you know, they're so cheaply made in the past. I was like, no, clothes were more expensive in the past. You like don't know how expensive they were because you're not thinking about inflation. But like a $40 pair of jeans, which I remember Levi's being about $40 in the late 90s, would be about a ton of money. That was our music. I mean, music is another one. By the late 90s, the CD was $20. That's almost $50 by modern standards. For you, music is basically free. So
on YouTube.
Yeah, it's an entirely different scenario now. And I do think, to make your point, it does reduce the value of these commodities. I mean, like, for example, no one reads books, but you're right. There's more books being published than have ever existed in human history. Very few people read them, but they're being written. And I find that's such a weird place to be. But it does follow standard laws of value. I mean, both Marxist and even neoclassical. Like, it's not. It is when you put it in economic terms, it actually does kind of make sense why it's going the way it's going.
And with AI, it kind of that accelerates things even further. The one thing that's kind of irked me is like most of the arguments against AI art that I see are like aesthetic arguments that it's not very good. Which of course the technology will get better. That's the trajectory. Like if you look at the video generation now versus a few years ago, of course it's significantly better. There's really no reason to think it won't continue on that trajectory. I think like if you are going to make, of course there is this whole argument that you have expropriated a bunch of artists' intellectual property, but that's like a liberal argument that hinges on intellectual property being something that you should support.
Which is, I'm always weird about that because I don't believe ultimately in intellectual property, but I also don't think you can pre-establishly abolish it before you get rid of other things without just impoverishing everybody who makes stuff. So it's
I think that's what's going to happen.
Ironically, I've seen these diehard capitalists saying like AI is going to kill capitalism. I'm like, yes. It might actually. And you know what? If it does, good.
Right. I've seen a lot of people that were like formerly like hustle and grind culture type tech bros who are now like they would never say this, but they're basically like full luxury space communists. That's a very interesting development. I don't think it's necessarily bad. It's a little delusional. I don't think that's going to happen soon. But also I'm second guessing literally everything. I don't exactly know. I do know that like, well, of course, like this argument like that AI art is like a product of expropriating the intellectual property of a bunch of different artists is true. But if you are a Marxist, every commodity is a product of exploitation. So it's just
hyper capitalist. It's not.
There's no ethical consumption under capitalism.
Right. And when you talk about expropriation of intellectual property, it's a problem because of intellectual property. Like expropriating other people's ideas is how ideas are built. Like that's how new ideas are built too. And while like I was talking to someone, I wouldn't call AI creative yet, but the idea that like, oh, it just steals everything else. I mean, that's what people do. Like it's mimesis and reinforcement. That's how we learn. So
they recombine existing elements of culture.
That's how you make something unique.
Perceived as novel.
Right. Unique things do happen, but it's because you're throwing old things together at like, and seeing what sticks. And I'm not here to like, I don't think like when people, LM's like, do they think like humans? I'm like, absolutely not. They do not actually think like people, but that doesn't mean they're not intelligent. That means they're not a human.
Yeah.
Intelligence.
They're an alien intelligence, which is much scarier, actually.
Right. Because one of the things I discovered from deep, like, my partner is also studying to do bioinformatics, and you can't avoid AI in that. And she's like, no one really knows how the neural networks work. And I looked it up, and she showed me some papers, and I watched some YouTube videos about it. No, we really don't know how the emergent properties of neural networks work. And I was like, oh, that actually
a black box.
It actually does weirdly make me believe that it might be closer to evolved intelligence than I thought, because we also don't know how our intelligence works. Like, and we've been studying it for a long time. So
yeah,
I mean, we haven't gotten good at studying it until the last 150 years, but like we've been trying to study it forever. So
we talked about this a little bit in our last discussion, but you know, I'm inclined towards like the computational model of consciousness for the most part. Obviously there are gaps in our understanding, but like in principle, like I don't see how I don't really see any other explanation that doesn't sort of devolve into mysticism.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Like maybe I'm emergentist, but that doesn't mean that I think complex things have interactions that's very hard to map on. So I know that the kind of computation that we designed computers do, which is Boolean, which was a mistaken notion of how human consciousness worked. I know that cybernetic theory was based off of the computational model being based off the ideomotor effect, and everything we've learned about cognition since then says that that's not true, because that's essentially a behaviorist assumption. Which is one of the things when people are like modern socialist cybernetics, I'm like, it's great, but it doesn't explain human consciousness, and we don't need it to. Actually, but like they thought it did, and that's part of why it kind of went away, and got only focused on machine learning. But apparently they were onto something, because machine learning's led to this after 50 years. So
attention is all you need.
You know, but I guess where I'm at is like I do think there are technologies that scare me a lot more than LLM based AI. And I'll tell you what it is. Biological computing scares the shit out of me.
I haven't looked into that very much. That sounds like a Cronenberg nightmare.
Right. Well, I mean, it's come back up. But like,
you're talking about like growing brains,
growing neurons. Like instead of making neural networks out of silicon, you make neural networks out of literal grown neurons.
Yeah, that rubs me the wrong way.
I'm like, I can't exactly tell you why it feels so dangerous to me, but somehow I feel. I mean, for one, I'm like, my computer can make me sick. Literally, I don't know how you would not have a similar immune response. Like
it seems unethical as well. Like, at what point do these devices develop feelings? Like, I don't know that. It would,
yeah, because
like,
also you're not,
like imprisoned.
It's not just like growing organs; like you're literally growing neurocells. Like, but luckily, I hadn't heard about it in about, like, it was a big deal in the aughts. I hadn't heard about it, and then someone brought it up in light of like trying to get this new quantum computing up, and I'm like, oh my god, I do not want to think about quantum computing that uses biological hardware. Like, maybe that's my weird theory limit.
Like, so yeah, I mean, there's this whole theory of consciousness that, like some people kind of flirt with the idea that there's some kind of quantum mechanics going on that enables consciousness. I think that's you start getting into some woo-woo territory with that, right? I got into this a bit in my analysis of 3D Workers Island, because in the story, there's like a README file about this screensaver that says that that's kind of insinuates that it's like some kind of self-aware AI. And so that was the reason I was talking about it. But like, that was the main refutation that I received from other commenters when I talked about the computational model. They tried to argue that there's actually some kind of quantum thing going on that we don't quite understand.
Okay, I mean, that doesn't actually disprove the computational model, though. I mean, like, even if you
it doesn't.
I was going to say, quantum computing is something we were just talking about a second ago,
right?
So, like,
it feels like they're just trying to muddy the waters. And
it's like taking a valid scientific concept and Deepak Chopra-ing it, but not Deepak Chopra-ing enough that you could call it out for that. Like,
Right.
I don't know, man. I tend to be a materialist on this stuff. I don't know how cognition really works, but I suspect that it's at least partly computational. I also suspect that it's a lot more embodied, that we'll learn that that your brain's super important. It's the most important, but like that your actual thinking is probably more diffused over your body than we like to want to believe. Which is something I probably do believe that. I mean, not like octopi whose literal brain is diffused all over their body, but like I do think probably the other neural networks probably do more than we realize. As far as like your overall cognition goes.
The gut, especially, which makes me wonder.
Yeah, me
what
too.
The
I worry about it.
I'm like, okay, I don't have a colon, so am I not as smart as a person with a colon now?
Maybe you're smarter. I don't know. I don't know what the colon plays, but yes, I know that gut issues matter, and I have them too. And I can tell you there's things that don't seem to affect my overall intelligence within what I know. But I can tell you stuff that brings out aphasia and short-term memory loss. And I see that a lot as I get older and stuff changes in my body. Like, and again, I know I might sound rude. I'm not a doctor. I'm going to go ahead and disclose that. But like, it is something I noticed. I think socialists, for as much as socialists talk about science, I've been kind of like aghast at how few of them are interested in actual science. Like, other than maybe like, oh, science is socially constructed. And I'm like, so shit. So is language. And when you talk about science and language, that doesn't get you as far as you think it does. Like, I will also admit that the way Marx used science in the past was not the way we use it. And it was overly positivistic, but like, I do sort of like, yeah, we should be interested in science again. Like, definitely. And not just trying to vindicate Soviet science, which is what some people are now. Like guys, even if you're right, you think that stuff would progress over the past 50 years or so. I mean, like, I don't know. Talk about it more. But yeah.
I could definitely say, like, yeah, having 4 surgeries has affected my brain. I don't exactly know if it's the stuff they use to put me under, or just the pain and associated trauma with it. Or the fact that I'm smoking weed more. I mean, that's obviously a factor too, just to quell the stomach cramps. But my attention span is shot. I can barely read a page. Like, if it's like dense literature, I'm having a hard time with it these days.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have that problem yet, but I do have more problems retaining it. So like I've read a lot of really dense books in the past 15 years, and the ones I read 15 years ago I probably remember better than some of the ones I read last year. And that is a little like, that made me feel good.
That might just be kind of normal, because those books you're reading like over a decade ago might have been more formative for you.
That's probably part of it. But also, like, I'm of an age where my parts of my medulla oblongata are going to start to rot. So as you know, once you hit 40, parts of your hindbrain that control your memory rot, and your memory creation, because it is created, it's not like accessed one-to-one, moves to a different part of your brain. Up closer to your frontal lobe. And this is me being very vulgar. It's not literally moving, but like that's where memory starts to be processed. And you get to the point where, if you ever notice with old people, they can think critically or they can remember, but they can't do both at the same time. And which is kind of worrisome when you get all nostalgic. You're like, uh-oh, literally shutting your brain down at a certain age. Yeah. Well, David, we've been talking for almost 4 hours, so I'm gonna let you go.
We have. That's true. This always happens. So
yeah, we like to talk. That's why I have you on about once a year. We'll see you again sometime soon, hopefully. I'm looking forward to more stuff coming out on your channel. We didn't talk about that Harvest movie on Mubi, but
that's right.
Maybe we can do that in a couple months or so.
Sure. Did you get a chance to watch it?
Not yet, so I'm kind of glad we didn't talk about it.
Yeah, check it out.
All right. So you just got a movie rep from Dave, and that's where we're going to end. Look up his channel. Where can they find you?
YouTube.com/Nightmare Masterclass.
All right. And on that note, goodbye.